If you carry a firearm and discharge your weapon in self-defense, you could face hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and expenses. So carry the protection of CCW Safe, Self-Defense Legal Services membership. Upfront payment of all criminal and civil defense costs with no out-of-pocket for members.
And we are back. I'm Chris Evans, the CEO of Survival Dispatch, joined tonight by my good friend Khalid Muhammad from Command 11, aka 008. If you don't know where that comes from, watch some previous episodes. Even his wife calls him 008 now. And in the right order, directly below him is Jeff MD, our in-house 007, 26-year CIA operative. You see where this is going, Randy? I think you might be the first Green Beret called 006. If y'all in the audience want to tag Randy with 006, put a 1 in the live chat. I mean, it could stick 008, 007, 006. It works for me. So in the first half of tonight's episode, we're going to be doing a terrorism sit rep, so y'all are up to speed on the latest happenings. Of course, tomorrow night will be the debut of Khalid's Command 11 sit rep. I'll kind of be in the background managing the production side. S2 will be with Khalid. And just further to that for a minute, John Wheaton is a super guy. He's a super father. He's an engineer, has a lot of responsibilities at work. He owns a range. He trains people. He spends time with his kids. He's stretched way too thin. So we made a program change. You haven't heard the last of them. But Khalid stepped up to the plate with the Command 11 sit rep tomorrow night. So I'm looking forward to that. And tonight, at the top of the hour, when Jeff and Randy part, we're going to bring on JJ Carroll and JJ Morris. Y'all know JJ Carroll, of course. JJ Morris, though, is our top guy on the instructional video side at Survival Dispatch. The guy, he's absolutely amazing. Former search and rescue technician. We'll get into all that in the second half. So before we dive into the conflicted question, want to pull one thing up here and make sure that we get Khalid on stage as well. So our friends at Carnivalt are running a promo today. We do not get paid affiliate commission from them. They give us a monthly stipend, which is very, very much appreciated to help offset our expenses. We're well over $3,000 a month for software, for example. So they have a sale on today. It only runs until midnight Pacific time tonight, by the way. So you get 10% off with the code Labor Day, free shipping on all orders over $99, but you also get a free gift with every order, and they will just randomly throw a gift in the box. Think of the guys like at Summit Racing are famous for doing that sort of stuff. Similar type of MO there. So moving directly into the conflicted question, those of you who are not aware of this or not familiar with it, I should say, conflictedthegame.com. 14 card decks, card games where you have these questions that are set in a post-apocalyptic setting, and there's always some aspect of morality at play, hence the name Conflicted. I'm going to read this question off now. At the end of tonight's broadcast, Khalid, JJ, and myself will give you our answers. If Jeff and Randy want to leave their answers in the chat or the comment section, of course, they're welcome to do that as well. But here we go. A nearby city has just been nuked. Thankfully, you planned ahead and prepared a small underground bunker fully stocked for you and your family. Your family is safely inside, and you start to close the hatch when your front door slams open with 6 frantic neighbors. The nuclear fallout is pouring into your neighborhood as your neighbors grab the hatch, trying to force their way in. There is not enough room or food in the bunker for them. You only have time for 2 choices. You can either let them in and risk your family's survival, or raise your pistol and shoot innocent people through the hatch. What would be your decision? So, man, that's a doozy right there. Absolutely. So let's jump right into the first one here, because this is a big deal. And Clete, I'm going to go to you first. So Sarah Adams poses the question: another 9/11 is coming, emanating from Afghanistan. And this is what the Washington Post prints. Even the Taliban, pardon me, shouldn't be a permanent enemy. Man, roll with this, Cleve. Bring our audience up to speed on just the ridiculousness that's happening in our federal government right now.
This is our buddy, the former ambassador to Afghanistan, Zalmay Khalilzad. He wrote an op-ed piece for the Washington Post saying that, we shouldn't have permanent enemies, and the Taliban shouldn't be considered a permanent enemy. So by that logic, we should say that Al-Qaeda shouldn't be considered a permanent enemy either. And I mean, that's where this conversation is headed, because Khalilzad has been so pro-Taliban since he left the ambassadorship that he has written posts, he has written articles, he has done interviews where he said there's no threat from the Taliban, there's no terrorism there. Him and Gorka literally are lockstep together.
Yeah, just it's insanity. Jeff, do you want to add anything to this about? I mean, you served in Afghanistan. As a matter of fact, just so people understand the timeline, not only did Jeff serve in Afghanistan, but he was probably there other than the last day when, unfortunately, we had 13 people killed thanks to Biden. But Jeff was there at the most dangerous time. We had a handful of CIA guys go in, shortly after 9/11, and they were vastly outnumbered.
Those guys, that wasn't me. I was there after them. Believe me, the first guys in were the ones that were the most dangerous times.
You were close, put it that way.
Well, I was there like within the first year. But so I'm not painting myself, charging nests or anything like that.
Production problem there. Apologies.
No problem. But the thing is, Germany is our friend now, and they were our enemies in World War II. But they were Nazis then. They're not Nazis now. They changed. Taliban has not changed. They are ideologically the exact same group that gave aid and comfort to Osama bin Laden while he was plotting the attack on the World Trade Center. Can you make enemies into friends later? Yeah, if the enemy changes. But if he doesn't change, no.
Yeah, and I don't foresee that change happening with the Taliban either. So, Randy, you're welcome to weigh in on that if you want, but the next X post I have up is specifically for you. So your choice if you want to speak to the Taliban first or not.
Well, I mean, I think they've already covered it. To me, it's just more bias of the press. They don't want, apparently there's a big secret out there and they don't want to let you know what it is. And that,
right.
There's no real boogeyman out there anymore. So.
Of course. All right. So there's a specific reason I brought this just for you, Randy. So.
Oh yeah, I saw this.
Houthi children and a message to Americans. We will drink your blood and purify the land from your filth. 1 minute, 19 seconds. We are not going to get anywhere near going through the whole thing. My watch will start going off, I'm going to say, within 10 seconds of this. We stand with Gaza in the face of the crimes of genocide and starvation. We say to you, America, we will drink your blood and shake your throne. We will finish you off. We will starve you. And that, my friend. Do what?
Was this at Columbia University?
Right.
Oh,
funny, not funny, right? So I'm not going to play any more of that nonsense. And I'm not going to tell you what my thoughts are on that because we probably end up with a channel deletion. But Randy, you have more control over your emotions than I do. So,
well, pardon me. I would just say, look at me, that kid, probably isn't even 15, right? That kid's probably 12 years old, somewhere in that range, 12, 13 years old. And look how hardcore that kid already is. He's probably a Palestinian. They are nothing but trouble. That's why no one wants them. And,
right.
We're secretly bringing them in. We're even dumber than we thought. But, it just lends to, basically what those people over there think about us. That's a fact. Certainly the people that are hardcore and believe in this kind of thing. I go back to that video that I sent you not too long ago. You can watch. It's not just the Taliban. This is a Islam thing and I'll be as polite as I can. Like Khalid said, there are. There are plenty of Khalids, there are plenty of nice people that are Muslims that don't have this itch just to go out and kill everybody else and take over everybody else's culture and country. But the political side and the radical side of Islam is perfectly comfortable with that. And, they radicalize people just like this kid. This is going to be for life for this kid. And there's thousands of them out there just like him that we've now bred in this kind of environment. And that's what we're going to have to deal with for a long time to come, because they hate us. And there's no doubt it goes back to the same old thing we've said many times. When they tell you what they're going to do, you should believe them. And we're listening to a 13-year-old with that kind of passion in his voice and the way he delivered that message. That's a scary thought, because you look at what our 13-year-olds look what they're having to learn and worry about at school today, where these kids are out.
Pronouns. You mean they're
Yes.
learning pronouns? Yeah, that's valuable.
And the rest of
genders.
all the other stupid stuff that they put into schools these days. And, just like the press, that media, that one article lying through their teeth, and they know it, but they don't care because it's for whatever reason.
Randy, have you seen the videos of Chinese elementary school kids disassembling, cleaning, and reassembling pistols?
Yeah.
They're more proficient than a lot of American adults that I knew, which is crazy.
I think last year or two they put out a video too, didn't they? The Chinese did. It was one of their kind of capability exercises, not as in tactical stuff, but even marching. And you looked at those guys marching, and you saw the discipline. You know what I mean? And you look at our guys today, it's like, holy crap, that's what we're going to have to face. And if it's one of the reasons we've, certainly all the veterans are like, dude, the military is not a social experiment, and there's a reason why. And and we haven't had to deal with the real defeat in this country ever. And trust me, folks, you don't want to.
Yeah. Well, Randy, look at all the people that we had on that were supporting Pete Hegseth, like all the Navy SEALs, Bill Brown, etc. They kept bringing one word and one word up over and over again: lethality.
That's right.
We need Pete Hegseth.
Yeah. Uh-oh. Well, maybe he wasn't wrong, huh?
Production problems.
That's right. He may have got the channel deleted, huh?
Yeah. Well, the producer for this show is just lame. We just need to get doing it.
So I just got kicked off the entire stream.
Yeah, we were laughing about that.
Well, that's fine. Go ahead and laugh.
It got deleted.
It's kind of like when Khalid got us kicked off of Facebook last week. We don't even know what the heck he said, for crying out loud. But I was going to ask you a question, Randy, and I don't know if you know this or not. Maybe Jeff or Khalid know, but I have this vague recollection in the movie Charlie Wilson's War. He said something to the effect of 50% of the Afghanistan population at that point in time, when the Russians were still occupying Afghanistan, were under 18 years old.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, Khalid, I see you shaking your head. Like, what's that number look like today?
Before he gets into it, you got to realize they're 85% illiterate too. Most of those kids are not going to school. They don't know how to read or write.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Khalid.
Yeah. No, the number is still really high of the youth population of Afghanistan. I mean, even if you look at Pakistan, I think we're 60% is below the age of 25. If you look at the way that kid was talking, I've seen videos from Afghanistan where you've got 12, 13-year-old kids that have already been given AKs and they're being trained on how to shoot. So it's not new to us. We've seen this. This is something that is taught from a very young level. That hate, that anger, that hatred for America, Europe. And what they do is they capitalize on, you're in this position, you're poor because of what they did to us, because of what they do to us. And it builds up inside them. That's how they get that idea that, we can kill and we can become strong and we can become this. The problem with that mentality is that all you're doing is you're feeding bodies into a meat grinder, because these kids, they're not warriors, they're not trained, they don't understand what they're doing, and they end up being human shields. And the problem that we have, especially as Pakistanis, is that most of the people we see on the battlefield are under the age of 23.
Yeah, those are crazy numbers. So I forgot, we got a piece of intel from one of our followers that I've kind of scrubbed so it's not identifiable, but Yaz 1334, I haven't touched a Microsoft product in decades. I'm a certified Sun Microsystems, Oracle, Cisco, and Red Hat systems engineer and network engineer, and I'm on a very high-end MacBook Pro. Nothing crashed but the stream. My browser didn't crash. My operating system didn't crash. And I don't use any crap from Bill Gates, never has. I was actually an evangelist when I was at Sun and went from trade show to trade show and had a bunch of Microsofties following me because my job was to point out how crappy Microsoft's products were and how good ours were as the largest Unix vendor in the world. So you assumed wrong. Anyway, moving on from there, let me share this, and then Khalid, I'll have you comment on it. And Jeff and Randy, you're welcome to as well. So I really condensed this and stripped it of identifiable information, but it's lax security report from one of our followers at an airport during an air show, multiple agencies on site. I was able to roam unmolested virtually anywhere on the airport. I was able to go in and out with a side-by-side. I barely had to slow down, and they would open the gate for me. Here's the kicker. I work for an EMS in a different county. My shoulder patch was different, all in capitals, than everyone else's. I wore my company name badge backwards on purpose. When I would walk up to any gate or door, I was allowed in, no questions. In short, this sums up the fact that simply a uniform that is very similar will fool 99% of other agencies that are not affiliated with. I am also guilty of the same thing. See a uniform, badge, sidearm, and vest. He's automatically a good guy to me. This is a problem we all need to work on, I think. So, Khalid, go ahead and take the first swing at that. And then Jeff and Randy, you're welcome to comment on as well.
Well, look, we've been saying this for a while that, when you get into that recognition position, you're just looking at the base parts of the uniform. Does he have a badge? Does he have a shoulder patch? Does it look like a police officer, EMS, fire department? I sent you that story as well of the two guys that were caught that were pretending to be firefighters, and they ended up being illegal aliens instead. It's unbelievable that most people don't even know what their local sheriff and local police department looks like. And in a situation where mayhem and havoc is created, you're going to have a lot of plainclothes police officers on the X. And at that point, you're completely blind. You don't know who's a cop and who isn't. So it goes back to us saying that, stop and look what your police cars look like. Look what the uniforms look like. So at least now when you're calm and you're sensible, you learn that uniform. Pick off 2 or 3 things that, okay, I'm going to look for these 3 things whenever I see somebody to make sure he's real and he's not. This guy being able to walk around an airfield during an air show with multiple agencies, and that's not, just police, that's federal as well. And no one stopped him because he had a uniform on, which means first responders are even going to have the same problem of not knowing what agency who's from.
Yeah, well, I'm dying to ask you, Jeff, in all your years of experience, I mean, most of the time you were, plain clothes, but have you seen anything like this unfold where just anybody wearing a uniform has been given unfettered access to a venue like this? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah. I've had it happen to me. I was at an airport, which shall remain nameless. And I was, taken back behind legitimately by a customs official. And he had to go do something. And I'm walking around. I don't have a badge. I don't have any insignia. I'm wearing, civilian clothes. And I'm walking around behind security in the bowels of the airport. Nobody stopped me. Nobody questioned me. And a half of it is, do you act like you belong there? if you're not looking around and being all curious, and if you're just like, okay, I'm walking down the hall, I know where I'm going. People don't question that.
Yep.
And with this guy, I think during an air show, because there were probably so many different groups there, nobody's exactly sure of who's there, who's not there, who's supposed to be there, who isn't, and what everybody's uniform looks like. So the more people involved, the easier it is to get away with it.
I would think so. I mean, it's just crazy. So, Randy, I got to ask you, when you were deployed and stuff like that, if somebody, let's say, they shaved their beard, cut their hair, and put on a uniform, one of our uniforms, and were walking around inside of a compound, what would your reaction be? Like, would you just assume automatically they were one of our guys because they were inside the perimeter?
Well, you go to the bigger camps, that's exactly what it was. It's what Jeff just said. You don't know who everybody is. I had no idea who all the security personnel were, who worked at the APs or didn't, and any other place with them. They didn't know, except that I was white, you know what I mean? And I was in an American uniform. They didn't know any different. The only time I had to show my ID was when I needed to buy something, Otherwise, you can, once you're inside the perimeter, I think about if the airport out there and some of all the bigger camps, that's exactly how it is. And then you got to realize those camps, people are coming in and out. So when they come through the gate, that's when they're getting checked. Once you're inside, you're there. So it's really getting past that first step would be for the bad guys, right? If you can get past that first step, things are a whole lot easier on the inside. If you do exactly what Jeff said, you walk around, look like you own the place. People don't question that. When you start looking lost or like you don't know or something else or you're doing something unfair, that's when people will draw into it. So,
yeah, good answers on everybody's parts. I want to bring up the next post here, and let me see. Let me get everybody added back onto the stage again. So here's another one that Cleed forwarded to me. A former CIA officers posted photos of Taliban officials' wives from diplomatic passports, launching a campaign to protest the group's restrictions on women's photographs in Afghanistan. This is our friend Sarah Adams, but this is a pretty crazy situation. So, Cleed, do me a favor and explain what they're doing with passports. I mean, this is nefarious.
Last week, the leader of the Taliban announced that women were not allowed to have, they've stripped them of pretty much every other right. They have no education, no work. Now they said on the Afghani identification card, you cannot have a picture of a woman. So Sarah turned around, and Sarah's fantastic the way she pisses off the Taliban. She throws it at them and says, go ahead, do something. She has for the last 3 days been posting the pictures of the Afghani Taliban wives' passports, that this is where they are, this is what they look like, this is where they're posted. And the Afghanistan International, which is a Iranian funded newspaper, there is Iran International, there's Afghanistan International, both funded out of Tehran. They picked it up and they put the story out there to bash Sarah. And Sarah's still going. She's beating on these guys, and it's fantastic because the double standard you have, like the earthquake that just happened last night, you don't have enough doctors to treat the 2,100 people that were injured in the earthquake. So now what do? You banned women from medicine. They cannot practice medicine. They cannot study medicine. So if you're a woman in Afghanistan and you're having a baby, a man is going to deliver that baby when before a woman would do it. And that's beyond the Islamic version of what law would be. A man is not allowed to touch a woman, according to what the Taliban believes. A man is not allowed to touch a woman if he's not his wife or sister.
Okay. Interesting. I didn't know that. Jeff, I have a very specific question for you because I feel like I didn't do it justice trying to explain what a CIA targeter is. Sarah's job is incredible, and she's done an incredible job. She's not with the agency now, but she was for 16 years. When I first heard the term, whatever it was, and looked into it, I thought, holy cow, you've got to be one incredibly smart person to be put into this role. Maybe for the benefit of our audience, you could just kind of put a better explanation on a CIA targeter.
targeter, or some people call them targeteers, but their job is to find people who we need to recruit and to identify strengths, weaknesses, vulnerabilities, everything, so that ideally then they put together a package on a person. Say they want to go after you, they're going to say, okay, here's where he lives, he's married, this is what he's put on the internet, this is what he said, this is his education, this is more for us, most importantly, this is his access, this is what information he probably has that we need. And then you put all that together, and then you give it to a case officer, who then goes and establishes contact with that person, befriends them, and starts the whole development thing. When you're recruiting an asset, it's, you got to spot, assess, validate, recruit, and then operate, and then finally terminate. And terminate doesn't mean kill. It means, maybe their actions.
Not always.
You fire them. But what that does for the case officer, it basically lets you skip the whole spotting thing. Because when I was in, we didn't really have targeters, and you had to do that all yourself. And we spent, for every person you meet, you spend countless hours trying to figure out who they are and where they are, where they have access. Because we might be just given a target. We want the Iranian nuclear program. Okay, so you got to go out and find Iranians with access to the nuclear program, and they're not going to put it on their resume. Oh yeah, by the way, I'm on the Iranian nuclear program. You've got to read between the lines on their resumes and histories.
I don't know if this is like part of the job or if it was just something Sarah was tasked with, but she did say at one point in time, part of her role was to take information from all these disparate places and all of the players, like you're describing, looking into individuals, and put together what the most likely course of action was, then passing it up the food chain. But I don't know if that's part of a CIA targeter or if they just leverage that because she's so smart. Go ahead.
It is, because you may not be targeting an individual, you may be targeting an organization. So you've got to say, what's the structure? Who are the people? What are the different branches? Who's involved? What do they do? And then figure out, if you're trying to go after an organization, either a ministry or a terrorist group, you say, okay, where is my best point of access?
Yep.
It's not going to be the very top probably, but who else can I get in there who's going to have access? Who's a great recruit?
Seems to me that there's a lot on the line there too.
Oh yeah, but what's secretaries are always great for us because they have access to everything their boss knows.
Yeah, good point. So I'm going to pull the next one up here. I'm not going to play even the beginning of this video, and I'll go to you first, Randy, and then back to you, Khalid. But I trust him. I believe him. I'm certain that his objectives are aligned with our objectives. So this is Tom Barrack, our ambassador to that Turkey, Syria area. And he's talking about Jolani. So Jolani is the guy who was Al-Qaeda. He was part of the fracture when ISIS was split off. They basically trimmed his beard up and put him in a three-piece suit and are now proposing that he's a good partner to run Syria. This was a regime change pulled off by Obama before the Biden installation ended, essentially. And Randy, I don't know if you've kept up with this at all or not, but this guy, this Tom Barrack and Sebastian Gorka are going to have a whole lot of blood on their hands for saying, oh, the Taliban are our friends. Jolani is our friend. That just ain't the case.
Well, it's the same old adage. I mean, we've been talking about it for a long time. Those people are part of the press, you know what I mean? And they know they're lying. They know they're lying. But, we don't know what their marching orders. We don't know anything of really why they're doing what they're doing, but we know they're lying. And it's clear that they are. Khalid's brought up many times over the last 2 or 3 weeks about the stuff that Jolani's got going on, and everything that's cooking up in Afghanistan is under his watch. So, I mean, it's just amazing that they can say anything on national TV today and no one fact checks them. And then anything that's fact checked is actually the truth. that they're trying to pass over a lie to cover up the truth. It's ridiculous, but that seems to be where we're at.
It is ridiculous. And Cleet, I want you to weigh in with just me. I just got to add one thing. I personally think that there's zero attention, zero sense of urgency over the rock solid intel over 9/11 2.0 being imminent, because Donald Trump doesn't want one Nobel Peace Prize. He wants 2 Nobel Peace Prizes because Obama got one, and he's hell-bent and determined that every aspect of his legacy outshines Obama's. So he wants one right away, and he's going to want another one before his 4 years are up. And I think that they're being blinded by that. I think the orders are coming from the top down. No new wars. We're not going to attack Afghanistan. I mean, personally, my opinion is we should be turning Afghanistan into a freaking parking lot, knowing what we know about what's going on over there. But I'll let you pick it up there, Khalid.
Well, you're right in what you're saying, because we have seen a shift in the Middle East. For the last 25 years, Afghanistan has been the focus of the entire world. I mean, the U.S. was there for 20 years as a democratic force, and everyone remembers that while the U.S. was in Afghanistan, everything was peaceful. Yes, there was fighting, but there was at least a government that you could trust. The problem is now that since Joe Biden pulled out the way he did, I mean, you pulled out in such a way that you embarrassed the U.S. across the entire region. Literally across the entire region, you embarrassed the U.S. The fact that you lifted the bounty on Sirajuddin Haqqani, who has killed so many U.S. soldiers, and you lifted the bounty on him, and you lifted the bounty on 2 of his brothers as well, and we all turned around and went, wait a minute, what's this? And then next thing we saw, Donald Trump met with Jolani on Prince Salman's request. And Erdogan was on the call. Salman was sitting there. Donald Trump was sitting there. And you've got Jolani sitting with the president. And back in Syria, in the prisons, the ISIS fighters were all celebrating that, look, our commander met the president of the United States. Our commander met the president of the United States. And here you've got Tom Barak saying, I trust him. I believe him. And his objectives align with mine. That's exactly what Seb Gorka said at the Heritage Foundation, that the Taliban's objectives align with our objectives. This is a script that's been written very, very high up, and it's being filtered down. And there's no way that there could be this kind of synergy in 3 different people's statements. You've got Khalilzad writing in the Washington Post, you've got Gorka being the frontline speaker, and you've got Barak sitting in Lebanon, Syria, and Turkey, and supporting Jolani in everything he does.
It just doesn't square at all. But Jeff, I've got to hear your opinion on this Jolani stuff, because it's infuriating.
Well, yeah, it really is. I mean, you're talking about trying to put lipstick on a pig. Yeah, I don't know what their objective is, unless they're trying to say, okay, we don't need any more trouble. Let's make nice. Let's pretend he's a statesman, and in the hopes that he basically focuses on his own people and doesn't try to stir up more trouble in the region. But it's like, okay, it's ISIS. All they've ever done is stir up trouble in the region. To expect them to somehow, mature, grow up, settle down, it's not going to happen. And I think I just don't understand the logic of if you really think the Taliban they're our kind of people, no way in hell.
Well, I mean, I might have the date wrong by a day or two, but he's coming to New York City to speak at the UN, I think September 25th. Is that right, Khalid?
That's correct.
And again, he came from Al Qaeda and then was part of the splinter that turned into the initial ISIS. Is that this fact not lost on our entire administration, that you're letting one of the shitbags into our country who's part of the worst attack on our soil? And yes, we have a whole deep dive we're doing, I promise, on 9/11 at some point in time. And I'm not saying that the entire official narrative is correct by any stretch of the imagination, but these guys aren't our friends, Jeff. I mean, the optics of an Al Qaeda, then ISIS leader speaking in New York City, for real? Like,
why not? Why did you kill Ayman Zawahiri? Why didn't you just bring him to the UN? Why did you kill Osama bin Laden, man? Why don't you just make him, president of a country somewhere? Yeah, this is nonsense. You know, these are the most barbaric people on the freaking planet. Do people not remember what what ISIS did to the Yazidi people? They just enslaved hundreds and thousands of women and children and used them as sex slaves for years in Iraq. I mean, these are not nice people. They will never be nice people.
How about the videos of them taking American hostages and cutting their heads off? I mean,
Yeah.
that stuff there makes my blood absolutely boil when I see crap like that. But we'll move on to the next one here, which is actually related. Actually, I wanted to mention this quickly. If you go to survivaldispatch.news, takes you to our Substack. When we're live, this video appears up here, but normally you'll just have the feature article. So if you go into the feature article here, it has everything on tonight's episode in written form there as well. You can sign up for free. You don't have to buy an account or anything like that to get the daily sit reps. You get our watch guide that comes out every weekend with links to all of our stuff. There's a lot of stuff in there for people who sign up for free stuff. But people who do want to pay, and we appreciate that very much, $7.99 a month or $75 a year, which gets them 2.5 months for free. One of the things that they get is below my signature on the sit reps. They get all of these sources so they can see everywhere that we went to research the story. They automatically get enrolled in our SDEN system, Survival Dispatch Emergency Notification System. If things go off the rails, they get access to our super busy Signal chat. It's insane. It's the volume of intel and information sharing in there is unbelievable. You get all 37 of our e-magazines that if you had nothing else, you could survive anything with the information that's in them. We sell them for $10 a piece. So you get $370 worth of those for free. You get early access to JJ Morris's instructional videos, and he'll be with us in about 20 minutes. And that's basically it, but there's value either way. So moving on to the next one here, which I said is related. It should be clear that Sebastian Gorka and Zalmay have decided to praise everything and cover up all the terror groups the Taliban supports in Afghanistan. The only threat to the Taliban is from NRFAFG. I'm not sure who that is, but Khalid will tell us, which the U.S. refuses to back. When the homeland attack happens, remember both of these names as collaborators and facilitators of the terrorists who struck the U.S. They are carry on of the Biden policies. The sooner you recognize it and take steps to stop them, the sooner Americans will be safe. The longer they are allowed to spew their uninformed pro-terrorist propaganda, the terrorists are emboldened. I'm not playing this. It's not necessary to play it, and it just makes my blood pressure go up. And I know it makes Khalid's blood pressure go up because let her rip, Khalid.
I honestly don't understand Gorka. In my opinion, I've read his books. I know his background. I don't know who pulled strings to get him into the White House to be Donald Trump's advisor, because he was fired in the first administration. Sebastian Gorka was fired by Donald Trump in the first administration. How did he get a job in the second administration? Who pulled strings to get him to be the counterterrorism advisor? I mean, this guy has never been on a battlefield, doesn't speak Arabic. You don't even understand what they're saying. How are you going to be an advisor on counterterrorism? Right. I know more than Gorka does, and I don't even say the stupid things that he does. Him, and he's very good friends with the Zalmay Khalilzad. I'll put that out there as well. We have pictures of him in Zalmay Khalilzad's house. That these are two birds of the same feather. They have orchestrated this campaign that the Taliban is clean. They are our friends. They will give them money. They will give them support. You do not know, you're pretending to tell the American people that you do not know that the Taliban is supporting Al-Qaeda. You do not know that Al-Qaeda has been handed over all of the mines in Nangarhar province of Afghanistan to mine for themselves, which generates millions of dollars for them.
Mm-hmm.
You do not know that ISIS is aligned with the Taliban. You do not know that Boko Haram is aligned with the Taliban. I mean, do you think we're all stupid?
Well, let's just put another point on it here, Khalid. So without going into detail and putting any of your people at risk, you have boots on the ground in Afghanistan, Pakistan, the entire area. And while the Taliban is trying to tell Sebastian Gorka and the rest of our administration hey, we'll keep Al Qaeda, ISIS, TTP, ISKP. We'll keep them all in check. We're the good guys. Tell our audience what they're really doing and going out dressed up as the Al Qaeda, ISIS guys, even though it's Taliban, dressing up as those guys and then saying,
exactly what it is.
Not us.
That's exactly what they're doing. Is that they're playing that old shell game when you'd walk down the sidewalk in New York City, where you'd have the guy playing with the cups and going, okay, find the ball. That's what the Taliban is doing, and they're literally laughing at the Americans because they're going, okay, listen, remember that old house that we had that we used to go and hang out at back when the Americans were still here? Let's go plan an attack there and take 3 or 4 people that we have in jail for something else and brand them as ISIS fighters, go attack that house, kill them so they can't say that they weren't ISIS, and show it to the Americans and go, look, we carried out a counterterrorism act. Can you write us a check that we get our counterterrorism money? The Taliban themselves issued a statement saying no Afghani can join the TTP, the Taliban Pakistan, the Pakistani Taliban.
Right.
We have caught Bangladeshis, we have caught Yemenis, we have caught Afghanis in the Pakistani Taliban inside of Pakistan. Who are you trying to fool?
It's mind-numbing. It's absolutely mind-numbing, but appreciate you sharing that, Khalid. Moving on to the next one here. So Sebastian Gorka, this is a quote directly from him, by the way. Warning signs were ignored. And this is pretty crazy. So you can see Khalid starts this post. Where do we start with this? It's amazing that since Donald Trump's administration has come into office, Gorka has been asleep at the wheel and acting as a spokesman for terrorists. But now he wants to talk about warning signs. First, the fact that he's on CNN, which President himself calls fake news to discuss this, should give some context to how valid his point of view really is. Second, the warning signs were obvious to everyone except the president's director for counterterrorism, not just the gender identity with counterterrorism as well. I'm not going to read the rest because it's your words, Khalid. So I'll pivot back to you to speak to that, and then Randy and Jeff can comment as well on just this whole debacle with Sebastian Gorka and Tom Barrack.
This is what I don't get. Gorka is responsible for counterterrorism, and you're on CNN talking about the Minnesota shooter and how warning signs were missed, and we should have realized that he had mental issues and that he had this problem. Why are you not on CNN talking about Al Qaeda? Why are you not on CNN talking about ISIS and what the U.S. is doing against these people? The biggest question I've got is, if you look at Venezuela right now, the U.S. has got carriers sitting off the coast of Venezuela, right? You have 50 million on the president, and just now you announced 15 million on the Secretary of Defense of Venezuela. The Taliban is sitting in Afghanistan, as Sarah said, that we should have bombed Afghanistan in January, February. We're not touching Afghanistan, but we're worried about Venezuela.
Yeah.
And this is Sebastian Gorka sitting on CNN saying, oh, the warning signs were missed. How many times are you going to make that statement? When America gets hit, are you going to come on CNN again and go, oh, we missed the warning signs that there were terrorists in the country. We missed the warning signs that the Biden administration had let 400,000 terrorists into the country. Are you kidding?
Do you want to start a pool on this? I got $100 that he says they were on our radar.
We were watching them, but we just missed it.
yeah, we were on our radar, but they got away with it. So
I think that's
Jeff,
what Patel's going to say. That's the FBI statement.
Yeah,
quite possibly. Jeff, I want to hear your take on why would U.S. government officials and representatives be praising the Taliban of all people?
Yeah, I can't speak to what goes on in people's brains. Sometimes I wonder if they even have a brain. One of the things I think is that they're saying, well, if we're nice to them, they won't attack us. And oh my God, is that the most naive, mindset on the freaking planet? That's right up there with the bully wants my lunch money. So if I give him my lunch money, he won't bully me anymore. No, it just means he's going to bully you every freaking day because you've given him your lunch money every freaking day. But tomorrow he'll be nice to me. And what we're doing is by giving them 45 million a week or whatever the hell it is, they're not even asking for our lunch money. We're just offering it up to them. And it's just so stupid because we're 6'4", 250, and we're knuckling under to a bully who's like, 5'6", $110. And it's like, okay, they're not a bull. How stupid you have to be to let a weaker person bully you, other than the married guys.
Right. Khalid can confirm the numbers, but there's one big bucket of money, pardon me, that's going to the Taliban, which is 40 million a week. And then there's several smaller buckets, but it adds up to almost $80 million a week that we're giving these guys. I mean, it's not to mention the billions of dollars and stuff that we left behind.
You're literally paying your enemy to attack you.
Yeah.
It's absolute insanity. So, Randy, I'm coming to you next with this one, but it's in the same vein. Check this out. The Taliban defense minister in Afghanistan says that they have cut ties with Al-Qaeda. They've cut all ties with Al-Qaeda. I mean, how unbelievable is that? Like, what is your take on it? Do you believe it? I don't believe it. I don't think you believe it either, but
no, but I think that they know that they can say anything they want and no one's going to call them out on it, right? The people that would actually come out and say, okay, that's not right, because the media here is just going to repeat that.
Yep.
And you know what I think, and I could be wrong, but I think it lends to what we've talked about before. Even though President Trump got elected and he's got a certain amount of officials running this way, there's people in all these federal agencies running the other way. And this guy we've been talking about, that's blessed off on July and everything else, obviously he's a plant from the other side. Otherwise, what would be the other reason for this guy and the things that he's saying? Because they know what they have planned, and that's what we've already discussed it, just like we just mentioned. And when it happens, they're going to say, oh, it was another intelligence fail. They might say, well, they were on our radar, we just didn't know it was going to be like this, which isn't true. The fact is, it is not true. So you have to ask yourself, why are they pushing this narrative? And they know that he's telling a lie, but no one's saying anything about it. And I think it's because it's a plant. You know what I mean? Why would he be there otherwise? As Khalid mentioned, he got fired in the first administration. So some of these things, as you write, don't square up and they don't add up and it's not logical. So what does that say? It's what we've been saying all along. If there's something that doesn't seem right, doesn't smell right, doesn't look right, it probably isn't right.
Yeah, amen to that for sure. So, I mean, you brought up Trump there, and here's a video that Khalid posted earlier. So listen to Vice President J.D. Vance tell you himself, 53-second video. I'm going to play the whole video.
As vice president, you're a heartbeat away from the presidency. And your boss is one of the oldest people to ever be sworn into office. You're one of the youngest people to ever be second in line. Are you ready to assume the role of commander-in-chief? And why should Americans trust you to lead the country?
Well, I've gotten a lot of good on-the-job training over the last 200 days, but also say that the president is in incredibly good health. He's got incredible energy. And while most of the people who work around the president of the United States are younger than he is, I think that we find that he actually is the last person who goes to sleep. He's the last person making phone calls at night, and he's the first person who wakes up and the first person making phone calls in the morning. So, yes, things can always happen. Yes, terrible tragedies happen, but I feel very confident the president of the United States is in good shape, is going to serve out the remainder of his term and do great things for the American people. And if, God forbid, there's a terrible tragedy, I can't think of better on-the-job training than what I've gotten over the last 200 days.
Fairly interesting comments on the part of J.D. Vance. Randy, since you're on deck already, tell me what your thoughts are. I don't think there's a whole lot of this video myself, but a lot of people are trying to play it as some conspiracy theory that Donald Trump is sick. He's going to die imminently, whatever.
Well, I saw him on the news. He does, but you know what, though? But we've seen this with every president. It doesn't matter who they are. I think Clinton was one of the youngest, right? When he went into office. And then you saw him 8 years later, and he looked like he was 20 years older. Yeah. And everybody that's gone into the presidential office and spent 8 years, whether that was separated or not, looks the same way when they come out. I would assume that's what it is. But as you pointed out, many people are now on this band. Oh, there's something seriously wrong with his health. The fact is, I don't doubt that they plan on JD being next, whether Donald Trump finishes his term or not. I would have bet he's going to be on the ticket and at the next race.
I totally agree with that as well. I want to get your take on this, Khalid. I think people are making a mountain out of a molehill. I don't see any imminent concern over Donald Trump's health. Do you? I mean, it's a meat grinder. I agree with Randy. But
here's the thing. I mean, I agree with Randy that the presidency takes a toll. You age 30, 40 years in 8 years because it is the most difficult job in the world being the president of the United States. I mean, you've got the entire world on your shoulders to deal with. So, yeah, it takes a toll on you. But the timing of this interview was really odd to us because JD gave this interview and the next day, all of a sudden, Donald Trump is dead. That was what the media was running with, that we haven't seen Trump in 2-3 days. He's dead. It's a body double. Trump is now no longer alive. Right before that, Alex Jones did an episode where he showed at the Pennsylvania rally, he showed a guy who is actually he said he is actually Donald Trump's body double, some guy named Frank something or other. And he showed him on video and said, look, this is Trump's body double back there behind him. And I was like, wait a minute. Alex Jones does this episode, and I'm not even positive it was Alex Jones. I have to go back and check my videos and see who it was that did the video. They showed him at the Pennsylvania rally where Trump was shot at. Then J.D. Vance does this interview. Then all of a sudden there's this craziness about Trump is dead. Trump goes out golfing with his granddaughter. People are saying he's a body double. I mean, my fear is this. The government has never been smart enough to do something without making an intimation of some kind. Before 9/11, Wolfowitz, Cheney, all of them got together and formed a think tank and wrote, we need a cataclysmic event like Pearl Harbor, and then 9/11 happened. Yeah. They telegraphed.
Yeah.
Our fear is this is another one of those.
Yeah.
You're making up the stories that Trump's health is bad. You're making up stories that he's not well. Today, there was a story that came out on social media that Robert Kennedy Jr. has said to Trump that he should give up his medication and start using herbals for congestive heart failure. Now, when was Trump diagnosed with congestive heart failure? That this story came out and was circulating in the media.
Yeah, this is probably a good point, Khalid, for us to just maybe give our audience a little bit more information on what we have planned and where we're going. So Khalid and I mapped out, call it 12 seasons. Think of it like a TV show season with 12 episodes each. So 144 episodes of Survival Dispatch News. And it's essentially the long war is what we're referring to it as. Tonight is episode 17 out of 144. So the first season that we did, the first story arc was the road to 9/11 2.0. And this now second arc, which is 12 more season or episodes, pardon me, is prepping and survival before, during, and after 9/11 2.0. And we stepped this thing all the way through. Now you can watch any of these episodes by themselves. They're all designed to stand on their own. You can watch them in any order you want. You don't have to watch them all. You can watch them all. It doesn't matter. We were very, very careful to make sure that you didn't have to watch the last episode to get value out of this particular episode. But the reason I'm mentioning it now, and you can speak to this if you want, Clete, then I'm going to give Jeff and Randy a chance to speak to it as well before we switch to JJ and JJ, is my personal feeling is based on what you just said. So I did a paper as a senior when I was in high school, college dropout. So high school was the end for me. But basically on FDR allowing Pearl Harbor to happen because Americans didn't want anything to do with the war. And it's a great way to pull your economy out of the shitter, right? Start a war if you have industrial capacity and ramp it up, sort of thing. If we look at 9/11 1.0 and what came out of that, whether it be the FISA system, Patriot Act 1.0, I personally think that if this is a setup, which I'm not saying it is or isn't just yet, that the Patriot Act 2.0 plus all of the compliance that we saw from the sheeple during Charlie 19 makes for a pretty dystopian future. But go ahead and weigh in on that, then I'll go to Randy and Jeff before we switch up.
Well, look, like I said, right before 9/11 happened, about a year and a half, 18 months before 9/11 happened, this think tank, Progress for the New American Century, was created. And it had Wolfowitz, it had Cheney, it had Scooter Libby, and they wrote a manifesto that said we need another cataclysmic event, just like Pearl Harbor. And 9/11 happened, right? Now, just as Trump is coming into office, Palantir comes forward. And Palantir exists inside of NATO. It exists inside of Europe. It's doing an absolutely terrible job inside of Europe. If you look at Germany, where the police force is using Palantir, it is not at all helping them to predict any kind of crime. Germany is completely out of control, even though they're using the Palantir system. But what have you done? The hospitals are now on a full Palantir system, which means all of your patient records have been computerized inside of Palantir. They are now working on your driver's licenses. They're working on your vehicle registrations. They're working on your gun licenses. They are working on your social media. They're about to launch Real ID that everyone has to get that connects the real person with everything else. And once you do that, you have complete profiles on every single person. We posted a video on our X of a former health worker who described during Charlie 19 how the kill chain worked with Palantir, where they would give you a score. And based on that score, it would be decided if you'd be put on a ventilator, whether you'd be given injections, whether you'd be given vaccines, what you'd be given. This is what we're seeing. We're in the process of Command 11 of doing a major study into this whole system because it is integrated across every walk of life. Palantir is integrated into every piece of your life. Once the police department has it, Health and Human Services has it, hospitals have it, there's nothing left that you can hide. And that's what we think is coming after this attack.
Well, before I pass this off to Jeff, I just have one thing to say. There are people inside of Palantir who've gone on the record anonymously and said that they will be able to predict crimes before they happen so that those people can be arrested before they actually commit the crime. It's as 1984 dystopian as you can imagine. Jeff shaking his head, and I want to give him a chance for his final thoughts.
Well, yeah, it's not 1984. It's Minority Report.
Minority
That's a science fiction novel written by by a guy named Dick, who also wrote Blade Runner and a bunch of other stuff. But it's bullshit. It's 100% bullshit. And when you start going with this crime is going to happen, well, and so we're going to arrest you because we said you were about to do something. Well, it's total crap. It's 100% crap. But they're trying to use this and say, see, the crime was prevented. Well, maybe it never was going to happen in the first place. And when you do these things where they're going to like have some horrific event, they don't have to engineer a horrific event. We got enough enemies. All they got to do is look the other way and let it happen.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. I got to roll out of here, guys, or my wife will kill me because we've got somewhere to be right now.
Yeah, no problem at all. Randy.
See you, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff. I got to get everybody back on stage here again. Hold on. Just bear with me for a second. There we go. Nope. It's not going to let me put you over there, Randy. We got the technical difficulty here with the production.
No,
there we go.
There we go.
When I lost my connection, came back in again, it reset all of you guys for what stage you're on. So, Randy, final words before we go to JJ and JJ here.
Well, I think Jeff nailed it. You know what I mean? We look at what's going on, it's some of what we've already said, literally over the last couple of weeks. There's a reason all this is happening, and they're not going to, they don't want the truth exposed until it's too late, and honestly, I think we are to that point again where those people that are in control, and we're talking about a very small group of people that have the kind of control and the power that we've seen wielded over the last 15 years, or even all the way up to September 11th, in fact. And it's all going that same direction, and then when they talked about, well, maybe Trump's dead or this, and he's got a body double, I saw a video recently of, it showed Joe Biden walking, right? Like the recent version of Joe Biden. And then they had the robot, right? That doesn't walk great, but it's the same exact walk. How do we not know that they didn't dress that guy up as Joe Biden the last 4 years? How do we not know that now? We don't. There's no way for us to know, but everybody's seen his chin and the face move all over the place, him stumble around. Heck, he even walked up on a Russian plane and the wrong plane at the airport on that one. Y'all remember that? They were, I can't remember where they were. It wasn't in the United States, I don't think, but there was also a Russian plane there. And he walked up the steps and went into the Russian plane while everybody else looked at the bottom and they didn't want to say anything because they didn't want to look like this wasn't supposed to happen. But it's just craziness. And so now we're watching this play out in real time. And I think that's why you see places, I just forgot his name, but who are we just talking about? The director of the intelligence folks that keeps busting off on Giuliani?
Gorka.
Yeah. I mean, you know, all of this, if you start putting it all in together, it shows a pattern, doesn't it? I think it does. And it
sure
looks like what we're saying it is. Yeah. So, I mean, again, if it looks like a duck, it walks like a duck, it's probably a duck.
It's probably a duck. That's right. So
yeah.
Randy ending his segment on a boom. Good job, Randy. We've got JJ Morris and JJ Carroll coming on now. We'll see you Wednesday, Randy. Thank you.
Yep. See you guys later.
Take care, Randy.
Yep.
So we've got our good friend JJ Carroll, and this is going to get confusing, and JJ Morris joining us tonight. JJ1 and JJ2. Holy crap. So JJ Carroll goes without an introduction. All of our audience knows and loves you, JJ. And I was just thinking to myself, you're the perfect person to follow up where Randy left off, since he took things up to the next level. Now you can get things cranking. JJ Morris, y'all probably recognize him from our instructional videos. He's the guy with the hands-on experience, one of very few men ever elevated to the rank of SAR1. He hates me saying things like that because he's a humble guy. But JJ, do me a favor, JJ Morris, that is, and introduce yourself to our podcast audience who've only seen you in the instructional videos.
Yeah, JJ Morris. I started out in technical rescue with Cherokee County Search and Rescue as a secondary, and then I ended up going straight into search and rescue and just worked my way up over the years. Became an EMT. I became a rope tech, eventually became a SAR1, a training officer, Alpha Squad leader. I've been around the block. Yeah, I hate introductions. I like the introduction to speak for itself. I retired 5 years ago. I put in 14 years, and now I run Field of Fires, and I do content for Survival Dispatch and Wazoo Survival Gear and Field of Fires, and just have a real passion for helping people. And
that's an understatement. He's been deployed to some pretty crazy situations. So let's jump right in. I have one article to share, and the rest of it is all going to be the three of you distilling advice and knowledge on our crowd. So let me get you guys up on stage here. Make sure everybody's present. So this is a very short article. You are always the first responder. You're always the first responder to your personal emergency. No one else arrives before you. The choices you make in those first seconds can decide whether you live or die. If your mindset is weak, your skills undeveloped, or your equipment absent, the outcome may be fatal. But with the right preparation, a resilient mindset, tested skills, and the proper tools, you stand a fighting chance to prevail. This truth was brought into stark focus recently when Ian Cameron, chairman of Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Police, and two fellow MPs came under violent attack in Philippi, Cape Town, after an unannounced oversight visit to the local SAPS training college. Their vehicle was ambushed in broad daylight. The assault was brutal, leaving Nicholas Gotzo with severe head injuries that required hospitalization. What saved them was not the state, not police on patrol, but Cameron himself. Despite sustaining serious facial injuries, his quick thinking and accurate defensive shooting broke the attack, got his colleagues to safety, and even helped SAPS identify and arrest two of the criminals now in custody. In one desperate moment, his preparedness saved 3 lives and removed 2 violent predators from the street. So no real need to read the rest of that. Let me get the boys up on stage here as well. So we've got everybody. And JJ Carroll, I'm going to come to you first on this concept of you are your own first responders. What advice do you have for, American families, Americans individually, how do they mentally prepare and get, past that threshold that, wait a minute, there's no help coming. It's just me. I'm on my own.
No, I think this is a great question. And just this past week after the Catholic school shooting in Minnesota, we had during dinner, my wife and son, I have a 14-year-old son, goes to a Catholic school. And if you look at from the altar of the altar of the church in Minnesota, it looks identical to my church that's attached to my son's parochial Catholic school. The colors are different, but the whole layout, columns, everything's the same. So we just had a conversation. I think this is what all the family members need to do, is families need to do, is they need to sit down, they need to discuss it, right? Let's be open. What happens? I tell my son, Joseph, now tell me what happens when somebody comes in the church and begins shooting. I'm going to get on the floor and get under the pew, Dad. Great. What are you going to do if you're in the second story of your school? Well, Dad, there's a window. I can crawl out and I'm going to lay flat on the roof so no one can see me. Perfect. If you're on the first floor, what are you going to do? I'm going to get out and then I'm going to run as fast as I can. And there's a building across the street that I know I can find somebody. You have to have these conversations. And then I'm beginning to have this conversation with my son that, okay, now listen, man, you're starting to become a man. So that means you can't just hide under a pew. You're going to hide under a pew and then you're going to watch and see where that angle is. And then when you have the chance, then you're going to have to make that decision as a man to go after him. And if you can get him on the ground, what are you going to do, son? Are you going to fight him with this gun? Or are you going to take it away and you're going to have to shoot and kill him? And you're going to have these discussions. Is this what the discussions I want to have with my son? No, I don't. My father never had these discussions with me. But I also have to have discussions about my son, telling him that he should never be ashamed of his skin color or the color of his eyes or hair. I have to talk to my son about transgender freaks. I have to talk to my son about sexual perversion. I have to talk to my son about things that my father would never have had these conversations with me. So this is a new age, a new era in America where you have to be brutally honest with your family and your loved ones and have those hard discussions about what you're going to do.
A quick question, JJ, before we move to JJ number 2. You're a pretty big guy, 6'3", well over 200 pounds. How's the apple that fell from the tree? Is it going to be a big boy like you?
Well, no, my son, I love this more than anything. So thanks for asking me. Is my son's adopted. My wife and I met very much later in life, and we adopted my son. And my son is a physical specimen. Like he's a physical specimen. Where if he asked me one more time, when did I start having six-pack abs? I'm going to slap him because I never had six-pack abs. And I'm trying to tell my son that is not normal. You either diet till you die or you're God-given it. So my son is I think he's a very strong young man, and he's determined and he knows what he believes in and why. And there's coming a time where he's going to be a man and going to have to make these very hard man decisions where I have to make them the same way. And this is how, and I hate to say this, but this is how far America's fallen. Are we the greatest country on planet Earth? Yes, we are, because all the other countries have a myriad of problems that make ours look different. But are we great like we once were? The answer is no. The answer is absolutely 100% no, because we have allowed the enemy inside our power structure. We've allowed the people that are the most grotesque, the most vile, the most corrupt, and they are running our nation. And we have done nothing as men to stop it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and well said. So, JJ Morris, got a very specific question for you related to your background. At a high level, what are some of the specific skills that every adult should possess for immediate emergency response? I mean, it's called first aid because you're trying to stabilize somebody until somebody like you shows up who really knows what's going on to stabilize them, to get them to a trauma center. But what are the basics that people need to know?
I mean, as far as skill sets go, that's a pretty broad term that you brought up there. But I think there's things that people don't think about very often, like just being good at situational awareness right off the bat. I mean, that's
We've lost JJ's volume.
Yeah, I just noticed that JJ, we can't. We've got no volume on you there. No, sir.
I can't hear him either.
No.
Hold
Try
on.
again, JJ.
I've got the mic on, but
Yeah, we can hear you now.
oh,
We
can
got
hear
you
me?
now.
Yeah, we got
Yeah.
you now.
That's weird. So did y'all hear me talk about situational awareness and de-escalation?
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
you-
Just the first part.
Okay, so yeah, I was just talking about in the field when it's chaotic. I mean, understand that first responders are trying to make order out of chaos to begin with, and everybody is going through a different stage of grief in that situation. Everybody handles grief differently, and I think that the misconception is that everybody should think like you, and then they should feel like you, and therefore they should act like you, and that's not going to happen. There's going to be people in different stages of grief, and you're going to have to handle all of that all at once. And I think a lot of times first responders, military guys, law enforcement, we all get this, like, we're standoffish, maybe emotionally detached in situations like that. That's a skill. You have to bury that stuff, and you have to compartmentalize all of that emotion at the time. And most of the time the emotion comes out later, so a lot of it's managing stress on the scene. And the only way you're going to get that is through stress inoculation. There's lots of ways to create that. For our training, maybe it's a time constraint. Maybe you've kept them up all night. We limit food. We yell and scream and place you in austere environments, and just create as much stress as we can. That's, I guess I'm coming from a position of being a first responder, and something that I want to say before we even get any further into this. The biggest thing that I want to communicate is we had support, and you will not. Right? I come from a position of support where there's all these cogs in the wheel that are turning. And so it's a different perspective than, let's say, prepared citizen.
That makes a lot of sense.
I mean, obviously you can say the cliche things like, I want you to have firearm and defensive skill sets, and I want you to have all the first aid training. But there's so many other things that people don't think about when you're on scene, like hazmat, for example. We had training in all these different areas, and all we did was train. And I think you talked about it when Glover and Sarah were on talking about, all these different skill sets that have to come into play, and eventually your instinct has to take over. And the only way that you're going to get that is through training. It's not, we can present any scenario that you want to tonight. We can play that game or whatever, but it all boils down to, like, not how many programs have you watched, or YouTube videos, or survival shows, or whatever. I mean, even guys that train all the time, we run into, I talk about it all the time in my videos, the X factor. There are events that come along in our lives, like 9/11, like Hurricane Katrina, name the active shooter, whatever. The stuff that we go through literally changes protocols and SOPs across the board. That's stuff that changes the way we train from here on out. And so there's some things that you just can't train for, is what I'm getting at. I mean, obviously you need to talk, you need to work on the things that we just talked about, but it's so much more than just creating a list and saying, okay, I got first aid taken care of. Like, okay, yeah, I'm pretty good at, situational awareness. I'm going to defensive classes. I'm enrolled in this survival course. There's just so much to it, I guess, is what I'm getting at. It's like, you can't just narrow it down. This is the kind of thing that you could literally prep for the rest of your life. Call it a hobby or whatever, but it's a mindset and something that you have to keep up with constantly. And nowadays, I mean, there's so much misinformation and disinformation and malinformation, and you have to sort through all of that, and you have to make decisions on the fly. And the biggest thing we used to teach people is don't get caught in scene lock. Like that's one of the biggest pieces of advice that I could give you, I guess. Just getting caught in one way of thinking based on limited information.
Yeah, that's really well said. Cleet, I'm coming to you just a second, pardon me, but I got to ask JJ Carroll a question I forgot to ask him the first time around. JJ, your advice to other parents on giving their children guidance and without creating anxiety over, bad stuff happening, whether it's a terrorist attack or whatever the case may be. Where's that, that line that you balance things on?
Well, I think that line, if for me, I started moving that line all the way when my son was young. We started, I don't think you go into that, hey, the world's evil and there's bad people. I think there's got to be a slow burn to get that point. And I know some people are behind that curve and they're trying to catch up. And now you're trying to jam stuff in there and you're freaking your kids out. I did it from a early age. And JJ Morris is absolutely correct when you talk about you can't be prepared. I can talk to my son and I've talked to my son about where you need to go, but I layered it with, now listen, when that first shot gets rung out or something happens, it is going to be mass chaos. People are going to be running everywhere. They're going to be screaming. They're going to be saying things that makes no sense. I need you to hunker down. Just hunker down and take a couple breaths. Let things play out a little bit and then start making your decisions where you want to go. I said, because the very first time it happens, everyone, no matter how much they train, because they're not training every single day. And Morris is absolutely correct. I come from the United States Border Patrol. You're right. This happens, then that happens, and the wheels start turning, right? So now I got reinforcements. I got people coming. I got you name it, it's coming. Paramedics are rolling. Everything it's once that gets clicked off, there's standard operating procedure. Minnesota church, there was no standard operating procedure. That was just kids are getting pinged, sitting in the pews praying to Jesus Christ. I mean, you got to have these discussions, and you have the days of soft pedaling your kids are over. And I've been finding that very fine line between, up until he's about 12, I did more innocence than reality. And then I got to the point where at around 12, I went full reality versus innocence, because innocence is great and all that, but it's just different. You can't ride your bikes down the street anymore like we did. You can't be out for 8-10 hours and not checking with your parents. I mean, this is how sick we are as a nation. And I blame it on the demographic upheaval. I blame it on allowing people that are not Americans to be in power within the power structure. We have relegated our nation to foreigners, and it is unbelievable. And I say that caveat with naturalized citizens are some of the greatest patriots we have. However, you name me a country, a first world country that is thriving, and tell me, show me their parliaments, their judges, their law enforcement, the head law enforcement guys, politicians. You show me where they have a significant percentage of their people are foreign nationals, and I'll tell you, you're a liar, because there are none. The only stupid country that allows that is America and Western Europe. That's it.
We have 2 Obama judges born abroad. One of them in Trinidad, I think. Who now thinks that these 2 women from these other countries, DEI hires, think they're more powerful than the president of the United States. And it's their job to decide what happens to Guatemalan refugees and all this. It's insanity. You hit it right on the head, JJ. So, Khalid, give me just a couple seconds here to lay the stage, and then I'm going to have all 3 of you walk us through a scenario here. So imagine that you're in a crowded public space, when explosions, gunfire, chaos breaks out, and you're now into, call it the fog of terror, for lack of a better, explanation. So you've got a whole bunch of casualties occurring really quickly. Think Mumbai in 2008. The first place that they hit was a train station, and they killed 50 people in the blink of an eye, something like less than 2 minutes with full auto machine guns. So all that first wave is brutal. The decisions you make in that first wave, that first 30 minutes, are probably going to be the difference between survival and maybe not survival. I'm not an expert like these three guys are, but something that was imprinted on me by Mike Sterling that's really, really good advice is, you know, if you have great situational awareness and you're always looking around, there's more than the XY axis, there's the Z axis. So, you know, he mentioned how in Baghdad, for example, there was a lot of activity going on underground in various tunnels and sewer systems and stuff, but also in the city looking up. So it just, for whatever reason, people say something that sticks with you. So you've got three axes, X, Y, and Z, to pay attention to for your situational awareness. So let's get right into the first 60 seconds of the attack. Okay. So we've got people are in shock. You know, there's chaos, just like JJ and JJ both stated. Here's just the easiest question I can think of right off the bat that you have to determine. How do you figure out if the threat's real or not initially? You know, you hear the screaming, maybe you hear certain things, but you don't see somebody with a gun, you don't see somebody getting shot. Where does your brain go to try and square what's actually unfolding, like in that initial hit?
Well, here's the biggest thing. I mean, because I agree with both what both the JJ said. The idea of situational awareness has to be there, but you have to actually understand what a gunshot sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
Because you've only seen it in the movies. I mean, watching a movie and hearing a gunshot is very different than hearing a gunshot in real life. Half a mile away, what does it sound like? Right next to you, what does it sound like? To get that mental understanding and even be able to react. Because the problem is that we've all lived really comfortable lives. And when you live that comfortable life, that gunshot, if you've been out to the range, you understand how a weapon works. But if you have never been to a range, if you've never heard a fire, it's really weird. The first time I heard an explosion in Pakistan, and we've experienced this. I mean, I've been in places where we've heard gunfire start. We've seen suicide bombers clack off. That first 20, 30 seconds, your mind doesn't even know where you are. And that's where people get stuck, is that freeze. And once you freeze, that's it. That's your body count then. You're not going to be able to move. The problem is getting yourself beyond that. That's like JJ was saying, you know, take a breath, double breath, get your mind running, because until you're inside of here, your body's going to freeze. You're not thinking. And because we've seen it here, I've been 2 miles away from a suicide blast. I've been just around the corner from a suicide bomber and heard it go off. And I remember my own reaction. The first time it happened, I went, whoa, what the hell was that? And then your mind starts to come back to reality. The first time it happens, it takes you a while to come back to reality. But once you've seen it and heard it a couple of times, just like I said with the gunshot, then you go click and your mind starts working again. Situational awareness is more important than anything else, because if you're not looking around and paying attention to what's going on, you're never going to be able to survive a situation like this. Even if you hear a gunshot, you're not going to know what direction it came from, because you're buried in your mobile, or you're talking to somebody on the phone, or you've got your buddy next to you at a coffee shop. That's not going to work. Your head needs to be thinking around you, especially with all the threats that exist in America right now. You have got active shooters, you have got transgenders, you have got Democratic Party sponsored terrorists that are playing inside the U.S. You don't know. I mean, you guys have now come very close to where Pakistan is, because you don't know when something is going to clack off. And the idea that you are still not mentally ready for that environment around you makes you very, very vulnerable. Once you get into that idea that, look, I need to be aware of everything that's going around me. Up in the air, you've got drones that could be operated for surveillance. They could be carrying munitions. You could have somebody in the tunnels. You have no idea where the attack is going to come from or what kind of attack is going to happen. I mean, look at Ohio, the school in Ohio where all the kids got sick. We still don't know what happened there.
Mm-hmm. So this is a good segue to JJ Morris, because this is in his wheelhouse. So, you know, this first segment, when we put together the brief, there's a few main points, like recognizing the difference between a false alarm, a real threat, overcoming freeze response and panic. So condition black, where people just lock up. Immediate actions like JJ Carroll described, of telling his son, get underneath the pew, those sort of things, control your breathing, scan what's going on, but also the importance of all of these other things that play into situational awareness, right? Whether it's auditory, visual, whatever the case may be. So I've got a couple specific questions for you, JJ Morris. How do you train yourself to override the natural freeze response and chaos? And I know you're going to say stress inoculation, but I want to hear your thoughts on that, because I've heard some great suggestions from people over the years on that. But what is the first sensory cue that people should trust? Do they see something? That's what it takes to get them over the hump? Is it a sound? Is it instinct? Like, what are the sensory cues as far as tripping you going, holy shit, I'm on the X?
Well, yeah, I mean, people interpret information differently too, based on their past and their experience and their knowledge. But, something like Khalid was talking about, gunshots can sound a lot different when you're around a bunch of buildings or cars, or, if you're in the woods or you're in the mountains, or you're, like a lot of people I hear, they think literally a gunshot is a backfire, and they'll just keep drinking their coffee or whatever. Or if an explosion happens, they think it's some kind of construction thing or something. And one thing I do want to point out is, I think it's really important that you understand that I have seen people, even professionals, just freeze under pressure. If you apply the right amount of pressure to somebody, like I knew guys that were really good at taking tests, whether that was a written exam or they were doing practical exams when we were doing training scenarios. And then you put them in a real life situation, and let's say a child was involved with it.
Yep.
They just lock up, and I've had to, do the whole, hey, where are you? Come back to reality thing with them. But, I want people to understand that it's not just civilians. It happens to professionals that even train for the same thing. And you never know when it's going to happen to you. And honestly, there's very few people. It's a very small percentage of people that can handle that kind of stress, like real stress when it's happening. And understand that even if you decide not to do something, that's still making a decision. You decided not to do something.
Right.
And if you're not moving off of that X, you're going to be in trouble. And, earlier you were talking about, what should I do? I mean, you need to get out of there. There's no place for the John McClanes or whatever. You're going to end up being part of the problem. I say don't get monkey butt all the time in my videos, but there's a lot to that. If you can't take care of your own ass, you can't save somebody else's. You're going to end up being part of the problem rather than part of the solution. And I forgot where I was going with that. What was the original question?
Well, I was just going to say, actually, I was going to ask you the question, is it safer to stay put initially, or should you immediately move? But you went ahead and answered that, so I appreciate that. So the next part to it is sensory input. What do you trust the most? Do you have to see the thing happening, or is hearing it enough, or just strictly instinct? I'm not an expert like you, JJ. Myself, I'm going with instinct, though. I always go with my gut on something. If it doesn't feel right, it's not right.
Well, we talk a lot about your subconscious mind when we're doing training with first responders, because your subconscious mind is going to work a lot faster than your conscious mind in a situation like that. So instinct is really important. And, we always plan for the worst and hope for the best. Even if you think it's a false whatever, like whatever, keep going. Like those few seconds are critical. Get off the X, find a stronghold. I don't think people really truly understand what we mean by when we say get off the X. We're not talking about going a few feet. Maybe initially, say there was a gunshot, you go towards a vehicle and you get behind the engine or something. You find some kind of stronghold to get behind. But, if you're out of breath or you're tired, you're not fit, the things that people don't want to hear, like you need to create distance, as much distance as you can possibly create. And I know a lot of people don't want to talk about that. That's a big thing. And they also don't think about the people that are with them. That could be your children. That could be your parents. That could be, I think a lot of people in our space, they prepare, because I've had people call me at times and be like, man, I've got my bag and I've got all my stuff, but my wife is wearing flip-flops and my baby is in the, like, they don't think about their friends, because emergency waits for no man. It comes at the worst time. That's the nature of an emergency. And you have to deal with people's lack of being fit, or their lack of situational awareness, or the lack of them having the proper gear or training or knowledge, or even the will to do what they need to do. So that's something else that you have to fight as well. The idea is to get to a stronghold so that you can make a decision to get to the next stronghold, and to just keep going. Like, don't worry about the what and the why. You can figure all that out later when you're at a position of safety. So I tell people, don't hesitate. If you think for a second that this is a dangerous whatever it is, get out of there. Let the other people come in, secure the scene, establish the perimeter. Even first responders, they come in after the scene is secure. Let them do their jobs, because that is their job, is to create order out of chaos, and just don't get in the way. Get out as fast as you can. So
good. No, great advice for sure. JJ Carroll, I got 2 questions for you, but before that, something I didn't put in the brief. I'm just curious. I mean, you were involved in the arrest of 100,000, people illegally crossing our border during a 24-year career. Did any of those guys ever take shots at you, like firearm shots at you?
No, I never had that. I mean, we have shots coming from the south side. We had bricks and pieces of concrete thrown at us, baling wire to try to decapitate us as we rode our ATVs. It was very, very hand-to-hand combat there on the border, because where I worked was Imperial Beach, was the southwesternmost corner of the United States of America. And it was a very fast. It could take you hours to get across the border. It could take you seconds, and it was mainly a mad dash. So it was always a lot of fist fights, knives, and things like that. And then once I got up in the coastline where we were taking down Sinaloa drug cartel loads on the coast, it was just a manpower issue. It'd be 30 of them versus 5 of us. And wow. But criminals are cowards. They're just cowards. And then they're like sheep. You knock that first one down, then they all just lay down as cowards. They're just, that's inherently their nature. They're just gutless cowards. It takes men to go to a 40, 50, 60 hour a week job where you don't want to, and you have to get up. It's very easy to steal other people's stuff. So yeah, it was just very, very violent hand to hand. In the border where I worked. I loved it. I thought it was amazing. But something I'd follow up with JJ Morris is I would love the audience to know that no one's coming. Yeah. No one's going to be there. And I'm talking from a law enforcement perspective. Right now, there's less than 660,000 law enforcement officers, state, local, and federal. I think the height was 1.4 million. That's how much defunded police, Ferguson, all that crap has done to the law enforcement community. So let's break it down even further. 660,000. Now you strip away the East Coast and the West Coast. So you just stripped away at least a third of those officers, because New York City, LA, they held all that's the big numbers. Strip them away. You're down to a third. You're down to what? Maybe 400,000? 400,000 for another 45 states. Now you take days off, annual leave, training, court, injury. Now we're talking minimum staffing across our nation of 350 million people. There's no one coming. Not because the first responders don't want to show up. They're just not there. There's none of them. You understand? And then if we really, really are going to be honest, when you look at the totality of everyone that wears a uniform in law enforcement and everyone wears a uniform in the military, they're not all competent. They all are not have war torn or have major arrests under their belt. A lot of them are just average to below average workers. That's it. They're administrative hacks. They just do what they got to do to collect a check. So you take that number of 660,000, you drive it down. That 80-20 rule still applies. 80% of your organization does nothing. 20% does it all. That's not good in law enforcement, but that's the reality. So no one's coming. And then if someone does come, the probability that they're very, very competent is very, very low.
So, our mutual friend Keith Graves from Christian Warrior Training, when he first retired from the Bay Area, 30-year law enforcement officer, goes to Idaho, starts a security team at his church. The very first simulation that they ran, he had guys shooting off UTM rounds, so a regular primer with, a paintball projectile, but sounds, and it is a real gun that's been converted. And he told them, because he had worked with the local PD, and they said, we can have one officer there in 8 minutes, but I'm not sure when the rest of them will come. So he's on a bullhorn and he's going, okay, 1 minute. Meanwhile, people are getting shot, yelling and screaming, trying to get out the doors. And at the 8-minute mark, when the one cop arrived, everybody was dead. Everybody in the whole place was dead and been shot up by, the terrorists in the simulation. And he made the point, he said, you didn't even make it till one cop came. But even if you did, what's the one cop going to do against a bunch of heavily armed guys?
Nothing.
It's bad. It's really, really bad. So, JJ Morris, I want to come back to you, and then Khalid, I want to ask you a couple more questions from the practical standpoint. Explain the difference between cover and concealment for our audience who aren't familiar on them, the difference between the two, especially when bullets fly. And maybe give us some examples, if you could think of some mistakes that untrained people, untrained civilians make in those first couple seconds beyond just going into total condition black and freezing.
I think the biggest mistake is we're programmed because of social media and movies and TV shows and all that kind of stuff. And people think things like their refrigerators or their couches or the bushes or whatever is going to stop, those rounds, but they're not. You can even be in your house and I could fire an AK off and hit you 3 rooms over. The difference, for people that don't understand that is cover is actual real hard cover. That's like the engine block that I was talking about. You need something that round is not going to penetrate through. And I hate to say it, but, we talk about different types of rounds, and I don't know what all I can actually say on here, but there's, if you're down here in the Southeast, for example, there's a bunch of good old boys here that are, shooting 30-06 and maybe 270s or 7 mags or, at a minimum of 30-30. You need actual hard cover, something concrete, the stairs, behind there are a lot of rounds that'll go through cinder block walls at that as well. But that's, hard cover is getting behind something that's impenetrable by, the common round that's out there today. Concealment, now there is a lot to be said about that. If concealment is the only thing you have, out of sight, out of mind, then that's better than nothing. But understand, you're still a sitting duck. It's kind of like like people that they go out in the woods and they stay in a tent and they think that somehow they're safe from the predators like bears or mountain lions or hogs or whatever. That's an illusion. The tent is cover or is concealment. It's not cover. That's not going to protect you from anything.
Just got to interrupt for a second. If you all go to our Substack, survivaldispatch.news, JJ did a video on being awoken while he was in a hammock in the woods by a bear that he had to shoot. It was eat or be eaten sort of thing.
Yeah.
It brought the keyboard warriors out of the woodwork, by the way, and it turned into a huge pissing contest between 9mm and 10mm.
Whatever, people can say what they want, but
hey, 9mm for the hoods, 10mm for the woods. That's words to live by. So I'm conscious of everybody's time here, and I want to get into the next segment, and I'll go to you first. Khalid, we've got 3 more segments of this scenario to work through before we put a wrap on tonight. So we're past the first 60 seconds. We're now in the first 5 minutes of the attack, and people need to be able to navigate the chaos, make decisions, that buy them time and distance, as JJ said, right? So you've got primary threats, secondary threats, bombs, shooters, vehicles. You definitely don't want to be caught as a sheeple with the herd mentality and going through the bottlenecks. I mean, you can probably tell multiple instances of terrorists waiting outside a building for people to come out the exit and just to gun them down. But finding, using improvised shields, barriers, sometimes improvised weapons as well, keeping their head on a swivel, not going, paralyzed, condition black. And the first use of communications, like when to call 911, text family, all that sort of stuff. So basically, I want to get your thoughts in general on that. And then I have a handful of questions for the JJs.
All right. Well, look, the first thing you've got to do is get yourself behind something that you can protect yourself. As long as you're out in the open, you're a target. And it doesn't matter if you've got a weapon on you or if you've got a knife on you or how smart you are. As long as you are a visible person, visible in the terms of someone scanning with a weapon can see you, whether they've got night vision, whether they've got thermals, whether they've just got a regular AK on them. If they can see you, they can shoot you. So the first thing you've got to do is get yourself out of the X. Yeah.
Let me just say one thing, and I'm not disagreeing with anything you have to say. When the Pulse nightclub shooting happened down the road in Orlando here, a whole bunch of patrons ran into the restroom, and a bunch of them piled into one of the stalls, like the handicap stall, and they were all gunned down like fish in a barrel. So all I want to do is say, Clee's not telling you to do that. What I'm saying is, if you do take cover or concealment somewhere, you make sure you still have another means of getting the heck out of there. Don't trap yourself in a bathroom stall. But sorry, go ahead.
That's where I was headed, because look, your first step of cover is getting yourself out of fire. Your second step of cover is getting yourself out of the situation completely. Unless you want to play John McClane and become all badass and go after the guy yourself, then that's a different story. But 99% of the people in that situation are looking to get out. And your first choice is not the front door, because that's where they're going to be standing and waiting for you. It may not be the back door as well, because they might be standing in the alley waiting for you as well. You've got to be looking for a way to get out that they're not thinking of, which again comes back to understand where you are. If you're in a big plaza, big open area, look for a place where you can hide. From there, where can you move? Always be thinking the next step. First is getting myself into a protected area. From a protected area, getting myself out of the area far enough that I can move and get out of here. If you stop, like what the sheep will do, they break off in 4 directions. And everyone goes off in those 4 directions. And no one's thinking. They're just going, okay, this guy's going that way, I'm going to go follow him. You've got to be mentally aware that mind has got to be running. That, look, I need to be thinking, protect myself first, protect who I'm with, my kids, my wife. I've got to protect them. So first, get it into a safe position. Once I get to a safe position, look around, figure out where's my next move. Always be thinking one step forward. And it's like JJ said, once you get out behind a proper concealment place that can take a bullet, then you can move further. Because when you're in the line of fire, I mean, it's happened here in Pakistan so many times where you've had terrorists rush into an area, fire starts, and everyone freezes. And once you freeze, it's game over. And if you pick hiding behind a door, you're dead. These are wooden doors. I mean, you're dead. That's it. That's game over. Think smarter.
Yeah.
And
fair.
the more you run it through your head, the more you think about it, the more you put yourself in that stressful position that, what do I do? Then the more you're ready for it when it happens.
No, well said, Khalid. So JJ Morris, the intelligence that's coming out of Afghanistan, and Khalid's a huge part of that, he has boots on the ground there, is that Al-Qaeda and ISIS have teamed up together to pull off what are called complex coordinated attacks. So the blueprint would be Mumbai, India in 2008, and then Paris in November 2015. So a lot of things that happen in those attacks, you have these like separate small cells, which would be the ISIS guys. They go and attack a train station. They go and attack a cafe, those sorts of smaller areas. Then they hold up at the hotel in Mumbai. And in our case, it'll be most likely level 1 trauma centers. But in each of those attacks, there were secondary attacks. So in other words, they went in guns blazing, shot a bunch of people survived, the bad guys left, they got up, and boom, the bomb goes off and smokes a bunch of people there. And I don't know if there's an answer to this or not, but are there any, red flags or signs that a second attack is imminent, like these secondary devices, or should you just always operate under the assumption that there's probably another bad thing coming?
Yes, you always assume the worst. Like, yeah, you never assume anything. You're making an ass out of you and umption when you do that. A lot of times, for us first responders, obviously that is a huge concern. We don't just run into an area until we secure it, and that takes a huge effort. I mean, I know that JJ will, there's this, he'll agree with me. There's this big cog, a big wheel that's turning, and it takes a lot for that wheel to turn, and that a lot of things have to get in place on the board in order for us to take over a scene to secure it. And I mean, thank God, I've never run into a situation where there was, a dirty bomb somewhere. Maybe it was, we always tell people, just if you don't touch that, don't go around looking for trouble, right? Look for work, see who you can help. And that's all part of not being part of the problem, being part of the solution. A lot of people, I mean, unfortunately, it happens everywhere, and we learn lessons from paying attention to these things that happen overseas or even in our own country, obviously. Right. But I mean, you just shouldn't be messing with stuff that you don't need to mess with, period. Like, take care of your family, and yes, presume that is going to happen. And just like Khalid said, just keep going, get to a position of safety. You never know. I mean, that's the thing too, is, I talk about that X factor all the time, that there's things they're planning for that there's no way you can plan for. There's absolutely no way you can plan for it. So, just keep your head on a swivel. Go ahead. You were going to say?
No, I mean, we talk every day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we talk every day. So, I have an idea of your thoughts on, these things. But here's a question for you as a first responder before I go to JJ Carroll. At what point are they supposed to call 911? And actually, let me make one quick comment. If I was going to summarize everything that you just said and in our prior conversations, I would boil it down to 3 words: distance equals safety. So if distance makes us safe, when does somebody call 911? Is it right away? Do they escape first? How far do they have to be away? Like, what is your guidance on reaching out for help?
Well, I mean, understand that's situational. I always tell people, like, get to a position of safety first before you do that. Understand that there's going to be a lot of other people that are making calls as well. But sometimes comms are down, in terroristic type scenario training. Comms was a big deal for us. We had our ham radios, and then we had our GMRS and our FRS GPSs set up. And then we had our agency radio that was a Motorola or a Kenwood. Then we had our phones. There's lots of ways that we would try to communicate, but understand there are times when all of that is down as well. So, that's something that, you have to plan for. You have to make a decision in the field, and it's based on the scenario, but get to a position of safety first before you even think about calling 911.
Good advice. One last quick question before I go to JJ Carroll. Can you explain the difference in the cell phone network when you're a first responder versus not a first responder in a place that's been heavily impacted? Katrina being a good example.
Yeah. This is something that all first responders are aware of. If you're with an agency, then you go to your I don't know, whoever sponsors you. It's like Verizon, for example, with us. And we're put on priority. So we have priority calling, whereas other people don't. Now, this is kind of like a double-edged sword. because if a bystander or a citizen sees you on your phone and they can't use their phone, they'll offer you money. They'll tell you the saddest sobbing story that you've ever heard in your life. They've got to check on their family, their parents, their kids, whatever it is. So we try to keep our phones put away so people can't see them. And when we get to a place where we're safe, if you will, that's the only time we would use our phone. And normally it's for like communications that come from emails. Maybe it's pictures of unsubs or patients or people that we're searching for, just information, briefing type stuff or whatever, and that's important stuff. But a lot of times people don't realize that. They just see you on your phone and they think, I got to make that phone call,
Yeah. Well, no, I appreciate that. I just wanted people to be aware that just because the phone network's down for you doesn't mean that it's down for everybody.
Right.
And that first responders are given priority access to that stuff. So JJ Carroll, I'm going to go to the next segment here. So we're into that 10 to 20 minute window. And so think of it like escape and evasion under pressure. So you've got choices to make, like when do you shelter in place versus exfilling? How do you navigate when all the communications are jammed or blacked out? What mindset do you have to have as far as potentially helping others and triaging them, like JJ and Kalita both suggested, like as far as assisting wounded, potentially moving them versus securing yourself first, dealing with law enforcement's first arrival. And I have a question to throw at you for that, and then rally points. So the first one I want to throw at you, JJ, is we have had a rash of break-ins at National Guard armories that's been going on for decades, but it's really stepped up recently in Tennessee and California in particular. And it's funny because, I mentioned one last week when we had Sarah Adams on. There were 3 Humvees stolen from a National Guard armory in LA County a couple of weeks ago. 2 of the Humvees were regular Humvees. The third one was armored. They ended up getting the 2 back, but the armored one is MIA. Nobody knows where it is. But there were 3 break-ins at 3 National Guard armories in Tennessee in the blink of an eye. And I'm reading through it, right? And they all have a dollar value on them, JJ. And one of them says, and $3,000 in goods was stolen. And I'm thinking to myself, well, it's not like a huge amount of money here. Why are they even making a thing out of this? And when I read it, they stole $3,000 worth of National Guard uniforms and boots. Mm-hmm. And so then we went digging a little bit deeper, and we found that there have been multiple break and enters at dry cleaners across the country in the past couple of years. And some of the biggest things that have been stolen have been first responder uniforms, whether they be cops, paramedics, firefighters, etc. I've asked this of some other panelists, but I want to hear your thoughts because you were a special agent, you were a law enforcement officer. Are there any things that the public, and it's hard when you're under stress, I get it, but is there anything that would be a dead giveaway that somebody's an imposter? Like think of 10-7, right? So the guys come in on the paragliders with AK-47s. A lot of people, they haven't slept all night. They're looking at it. They don't think it's a thing. But a handful of people ran to their cars in the parking lot, got in their cars and tried to leave the venue. And they were stopped by 2 Hamas terrorists dressed as Israeli cops. Mm-hmm. And they stopped everybody. Then Hamas jumps out of the bushes, slaughters everybody in their cars. I'm curious what your thoughts are as a former longtime law enforcement officer. Are there any cues that people can cue into to say that just doesn't pass the sniff test? That doesn't look right.
Well, it used to be facial hair, right? Used to be all the police officers, law enforcement, federal, unless you were plainclothes unit, you were clean shaven. Your hair had to be a certain length. That's now a problem. Couldn't have tattoos, right? Showing tattoos. Now it doesn't matter if you like it or not. I'm just telling you that this is the codes that used to be. And when bullets are flying and things are blowing up, you're not going to be looking at uniforms, right? You're going to see a uniform and think, oh, thank God. But this is a good point because you just don't know anymore. Where I would always look at is the guy's feet. Yes. Sometimes they don't wear boots, right? They wear something funky like tennis shoes. There's no law enforcement guy wearing tennis shoes, no first responder wearing tennis shoes, unless he's plain clothes, like the ICE and ERO officers they're wearing jeans and tennis shoes to run. You're not going to have that. You're not going to see it. I think it's not we've talked about this a lot, and Khalid has a better handle on this. It's not if this is going to happen. It's when, and then the real question is how big of a disaster is it going to be? We've allowed all of the enemies into America. So they're conspiring it, and JJ said it, he was right. You can try to get into every scenario, but you're not going to scratch the surface. So they're going to try all kinds of different things. If it worked in Israel, why wouldn't they try it here in America? Right?
Can I jump in with you,
Yeah,
JJ?
absolutely.
I got something that I definitely want to talk about.
Yeah, go ahead, JJ.
Yeah, so because I've heard you talk about this before with like Mike Glover before. So I just want to provide a little bit of insight about how special operation teams work. All right, so we have issued gear that comes from the government, but none of us ran that gear because we always wanted the best of the best stuff. Now, as long as we could show them our weapons, show them our rope equipment, all the software, all the hardware, there was a very stringent journal that went along with all of this gear. It had to be inspected on the regular every single time we used it or deployed it. There's a record of it. But the point of me saying this is guys like that could tell immediately if a guy is legit or not. You know, if he's running Hill People gear for his bag, you know, and he's got, we also had agency, you know, flags that we would have on us to identify who we were, right? And you can tell the fake ones from the real ones for sure. But if you got a guy that's well polished and he's running super expensive gear, and I don't want to say like the Gucci of the Gucci stuff or whatever, but you can tell when a man is using tools and those tools are being used for a job, right? So if a guy shows up and he's got, you know, the fake looking patches and like JJ was talking about, you know, he's wearing, I don't know, whatever shoes it is that he's wearing. Like we always look at boots, belt, and watch. Like that's one of the three things that we look at. All the guys that are operators in general are going to have a certain stance. They're going to talk to you a certain way. We all have a demeanor. We all, you know, we move a certain way. You can definitely tell a fake from somebody who's a pro. I mean, 100%. Like, and a lot of times we don't wear our insignia out because we don't want to get shot. You don't want to know who the Alpha Squad leader is, or you don't want to put that out there for those guys to know. We just want to come in and show a presence of force when we come out there. And we're not going to be by ourselves. I used to be a strike team leader, and there would be multiple people with me, all in uniforms, and we're all have our own specialty disciplines. Right. So, you know, if a guy is a rope tech, he's got all his rope gear. The other guy who is whoever the medical communications officers, the navigator, the person that's in charge of the canines, we all have gear related to our disciplines on a strike team. And you can definitely tell when a strike team shows up. It's different than just cops and just firemen and, you know, somebody from like Georgia Force or something, some kind of volunteer organization or whatever. I mean, for us, I think that have been in this field, all three of us on the panel tonight, we can spot a fake like that.
Yep.
I got another question for JJ Carroll and then Khalid before we move to the next segment. But since JJ Morris let the cat out of the bag, so JJ was more than just a SAR tech. So when he said spec ops, we'll just leave it at that. But he functioned at a pretty high level in some pretty crazy situations. Number one. Number two, we've shot guns together a lot, and he likes to make fun of my 6.5 Kardashian rifles, but he likes to shoot them nonetheless. So speaking Gucci, you know, that's the deal there. So JJ Carroll, you know, coming from a law enforcement officer, how do just regular citizens who are, they're not the bad guys, they're good guys, avoid getting shot by cops? I'm not saying cops are trigger happy. I'm not taking that position at all. I'm saying that the shit's hitting the fan,
Right.
and somebody's lost their mind. They've come unhinged. As a cop, if I'm the cop, I'm going to go, holy shit, is like this guy one of the bad guys?
Yeah.
I may even draw on him, sort of thing. I'm just looking for advice for the average person on what to do when the real cops show up. Let's forget about the imposters and real
Right.
cops.
No, I think it all comes down to listening to the police officer or the law enforcement officer. Show them your hands, and don't be running out of the mouth. Just say, hey, I have information. Please, do you want to hear it? And then allow them to ask you questions instead of you telling them what you want them to know. They have an idea of what's going on. They maybe have very specific questions that they need answered in order to let their other guys go. I think it's got to be just like everything else. You can't be running around crazy. You have to know. You have to have a plan. If you want to get shot, you have something going on, and then you go running crazy right at a police officer. It's like a vehicle stop. The moment you make that aggressive stance toward that officer, all bets are off for you. Same thing in the chaotic. And you can't get upset with the police officer because it's chaotic and people are running all over the place, and he's trying to figure out what in God's name is going on. I just think and we're asking professional law enforcement guys to behave a certain way. And a majority of them can't, right? They can't function under that stress, just whatever it is. So now we're asking civilians to mirror what we're asking law enforcement to do, and expecting 1 out of 10 to do that. I think that is even ambitious thought, right? Is 1 out of 10 of these people are going to do what's correct? They're going to be running because they want to get out of there. And I think that's the most. I think that every time I see a disaster happen, a shooting, a bombing, or whatever, I think, my God, if I was the law enforcement officer showing up, how do you even corral the crime scene? And people are running out. The bad guys are running out, and I'm thinking they're good guys, and they disappear, right? There's so many. It's chaotic. I don't even know how law enforcement groups corral those situations, because I remember doing narcotic busts and all that. The crime scene, that you wanted to contain it, but it always spread and morphed out, right? Guys got in cars, they drove away. So now the crime scene's 10 miles wide instead of 100 yards or 10 yards. And I think that's the what law enforcement guys want to do is contain. And a lot of times, man, it's almost impossible, especially when everyone's freaking out. And, but Chris, you're asking me, how do we do that? Man, like I said, you got law enforcement officers can't even conduct themselves properly, and we're asking civilians. It's almost an impossible request.
Yeah, that's good. Pretty fine point there. Khalid, I have one question for you to wrap up segment 3. Then we'll hit segment 4, which is the last one of this scenario. I'm wondering if you could offer our viewers any practical strategies on setting up rally points, like rendezvous, setting these sort of things up in advance without being, hard-handed, whatever the word is, too over the top with your family. How do you establish something that says, hey, if the shit hits the fan and we're on the X, this is where we're going to meet. And if we can't meet there, this is where we're going to meet. What's your advice for families, especially with kids in that type of scenario?
Look, if you remember a couple episodes ago, I talked about having, if you've got older kids and younger kids, make your older kids responsible for your younger kids. Let them pick them up from school and then move to a rally point. Always look for, even if you're in the office and the kids are in the school, look for a rally point close to the school, because asking those kids to get across town to you is impossible. Mm-hmm. You getting to them is much more possible. So if you've got kids, think of the kids first. Think of how do you get to them the fastest, because one, their panic is going to be more, their fear is going to be more, they're going to be more worried about where they go and what about mom and dad. Set a location that's close to the school. First choice. Second thing, once you get together, find a route, not counting roads. Forget the roads. When this thing blows up, forget the roads. That's a parking lot. Find land routes that get you out. And your first goal is getting out of the area. Your second goal is getting out of the city. Once you can establish those kinds of routes, and I always say it this way. Look, you can rent a storage facility. You can rent a storage unit where you can make that a rally point. You're safe. You bring down the shutter and you sit in there. You can have food in there. You can have a little bit of light in there. You can have fresh water in there. And that can be your point that you move from there once things calm down. But as long as you are out, you are going to be worried. So first thing, with your adult kid, with your elder kid and your younger kid, let the elder pick up the younger and move to rally point 1. Mom and dad, wherever they are, get to that rally point, wherever you've assigned your kids, and always have 2 or 3 different rally points, because you don't know where this is going to clack off from. But always look around that school, that if this happens during school times, this is where we rally at. From there, you move to a safe shelter of some kind, whether it be out of the city, whether it be a forest, whether it be a second house that you set up, whether it be a storage shed, that in a storage facility, you rented a unit. You go there. Once you're there, then you can calm down, map out your plan out. Now the family's together, calm everybody down, take 10 seconds, understand what you're doing, sort everything out, and then make your move out. But the key is getting distance, and always safe distance. Not just getting distance, but getting safe distance. Because once this thing happens, it'll be just like Mumbai, it'll be just like 10-7. They will be going neighborhood to neighborhood. So you've got to keep that in mind. If you try and take cover in a house, you may get hit.
Good advice. So it's interesting that you hit on the storage unit thing. 83% of Americans live in urban centers. The vast majority of urban dwellers have nowhere to bug out. They're not going to bug out to the woods and live off the land. We've covered that ad nauseum in the past. So one of the pieces of advice we've been giving to people for a few years is, if you have a storage facility that you rent in the city that you live in, consider finding a storage unit that's 1.5 fuel tanks away from you. And there's a reason for that. If the shit hits the fan, you want to be more than a tank of gas can take the average person away from this urban center. But rent a unit there instead. Put a bunch of preps in it, like food, water, guns, ammo, whatever the case may be. And if and when the shit hits the fan and you're paying $200, $300, $400 a month for a storage unit anyway, you go to that storage unit. You have food, water, shelter, and guns. And on top of which, you should go to that community and have, breakfast at the small mom and pop greasy spoon and stuff. Meet some people there. But it's a cheap way to come up with a bug out, location that most people don't have. So JJ, I'm trying to get lost track. I think, is it JJ Morris or JJ Carroll next? It's JJ Morris, right? I want to make sure we kind of keep it in order here, because we're in the home stretch. So this is the final segment of this hypothetical scenario. It's the 20 to 30 minute window, and kind of the theme of this final segment is survival decisions, as things unfold. And if we're looking at these complex coordinated attacks like the intel that Khalid, Sarah Adams have brought to the table, it ain't over in 20 to 30 minutes. It'll take days to unfold. But preparing for additional waves of terrorist attack, which has happened in all these complex coordinated attacks, or it being prolonged. In other words, the tier 1 hospitals being, overrun by ISIS, the airports being overrun by Al Qaeda, who in turn are hijacking planes on the ground and then either flying them into buildings or detonating them in the air, just to scare the bejesus out of everybody in America. Safe zone, staying calm, tracking your own state, dehydration, shock. These are big things for JJ Morris that he's cued in on. And the mindset, like prepping for this stuff in advance. So JJ, first couple of questions here, pick whichever one you want to roll with, but are there essentials of barricading? Like if you just can't get away from this place, like let's say it's the hospital, what's the advice for barricading and fortifying some sort of temporary shelter? And then on top of that, I keep thinking back to Hotel Mumbai, the movie on Mumbai 2008, and the people are holed up in like one of these conference rooms in the hotel, and the baby keeps crying. And the bad guys are walking down the hallway, and they're like, that's where they are. So just advice on those couple things. don't mind, JJ.
Well, I've actually come to kind of a different thought on that. If you study other countries where there's been things like apartheid or other, collapse of the economic collapses in countries recently, and people have told me that have real world experience with that instead of barricading themselves into homes, they would make it look like their house was not protected intentionally, because that would signal to the bad people, let's just put it like that there's nothing there for them to grab, right? And so it was a psychology move on their part to not become the target. I don't know, it's like that, the guy who sees the security sign in the yard or whatever. JJ Carroll was talking about it earlier, where criminals are lazy and they're cowards. They're going to look for easy targets, obviously.
Always.
Right? But at the same time, you can invite them in, so obviously if you're, Khalid was talking about it earlier, if you put yourself into or you were talking about it being in a bathroom, there's no exit for you there. So you can barricade yourself in there, but guys like us know the truth. If we wanted to get in there, we could definitely get in there. And number two, we're going to throw some stuff in there to make sure that when we come in there, that you're going to be an easy target. I mean, if we wanted to get serious about it, obviously, as far as fortifying a temporary shelter, I mean, it's opportunity. What is around you? What can you do with it?
Well, the reason I threw that out there is look at what happened a few weeks ago in New York City with the guy who drove, I don't know, Vegas or Colorado, whatever. He drove to New York. He's walking around with an AR. Nobody's even, looking at him twice. They showed people in those buildings, the high-rise buildings that had offices in them, where they were piling up every piece of furniture they could find in front of their office doors. I mean, I suppose that's better than nothing, but I think you're right, though, right? If a bad guy wants to get in anywhere, they're going to get in. It's just a matter of how much time and effort it takes.
We have a saying, we say look for work and movement is life. And if you're going to fortify yourself into some kind of building, I think Khalid was talking about it earlier, that's your stronghold for them, but that's just enough time for you to make a decision to go somewhere else. I wouldn't suggest if it's, this is scenario based, obviously. I mean, sometimes you don't have that luxury, but the whole point is for you to step off of the X, get to a stronghold where you can recover, and then you can move to the next spot. So I don't really necessarily think that encouraging people to barricade themselves into places that could result in the situation and scenarios we were talking about earlier.
We had it
stuck.
I think we had an off the record discussion one time, you and a bunch of other people, and it was kind of along this line of if people wanted to get into your home, like the shit's hit the fan and people are looking for food, guns, ammo, or whatever. Best case scenario, you bought time. Worst case scenario, they smash a window or something else and set your home on fire and smoke you out. If they want you out of that house, they will get you out of that house, right? Like there's just no way to avoid it. So JJ Carroll, we're in a home stretch here, and I got a couple specific questions for you. The first one, probably something that a lot of people have never considered, but how do you avoid the adrenaline crash that leaves you just smoked after about 20 minutes? Like when people they have that adrenaline crash and they're not thinking clearly, physically they're spent. That's a really vulnerable point in time. And what's your advice in dealing with something like that?
I just think it's the same thing that we tell law enforcement is just breathe, sit there and you feel like you're in a safe spot, breathe, take assessment of what's going on. Being safe isn't running from place to place to place. You find something that's safe and you feel safe. Don't move. Try to figure out what's going on. If you can get a visual of something without, blowing your concealment or your cover, then take a look and figure out what the hell's going on, right? And then start making rational decisions. Calm yourself down. because we all know once you get frazzled and your mind starts spinning, your breathing's out of control, you're not going to make good decisions. You're going to make horrible decisions. So remind yourself, settle down, settle down, settle down. That's what I would tell myself when I was in my job. Just slow your breathing, because there's times, man, I'm out there and here comes a large group of illegals, and I know a lot of them are gang members. My heart starts racing, and I literally have to tell myself, slow down, breathe, slow down, just because I want to move very, very, very effectively. I don't want to waste any movements, any energy, but at the same time, Chris, we're continually going back to this. We're expecting people that are not trained to do this to do it, and it's going to be tough. And then I think this is a question that needs to be asked. I know we don't have time for it, but the question will come, well, where do you cut bait, right? Where do you cut some a group of people that are just dragging you down? They're going to get you killed too. I mean, that's hard. That's as not a law enforcement, that's different, but as a civilian with your family, that's going to be a decision where you're going to have to make. Do I just cut these people loose and take care of my family? For me, I don't think that's going to be a hard decision, right? If I see some lunatic left transgender freaks that don't know what the hell's going on, I'm cutting the bait with them. You're on your own. You hated me anyway. Now you're going to hate me more. It doesn't matter. I'm going to take care of my family. And that's a important question that everyone needs to ask too. Where's my threshold of pain, and what's my threshold of losing, right? I'm not going to lose my son or my wife for you. I'm sorry. You're going to fend for yourself.
Yeah, well said. So again, we're in this closing segment here. Like, we're wrapping up right now, basically. I got the same question for all three of you. You can go first, JJ. Is, if people remember nothing but one thing from this episode, what would that one thing be from you?
That you're on your own. There's no one coming. There's no one coming. It's not because they don't care. There's just not enough people. They're just not showing up. So it's Jocko Willink. What I love, his 100% ownership, right? You got to own your life. You got to be prepared. You got to figure this out. The days of holding people's hands and stuff, those are over. There's no one coming. No one's coming. So figure it out and figure out how you're going to survive. And like we can food prep, you can water prep, you can do all this. All that's going out the window when it's all gone, right? It then becomes a free for all. Yeah. I think you need to be prepared and understand. And it's nothing personal. Nobody cares about your life more than you do. So why don't you take ownership of it? And guys, I have a heart out. Sorry, Chris, but that's what I would say. I would say, understand this is it. You are it. And that should scare the hell out of a lot of Americans, because I look around a lot of Americans, they have no idea what the hell's going on. So they need to be prepared. Guys, thank you. Great to meet you guys.
Appreciate your time, JJ.
Thank you. Just had a heart out. Thanks, guys.
All right, no worries. So, Khalid, your thoughts on one thing. If people remembered nothing but one thing from this episode, what is it?
Stay calm. The second you get out of yourself, the second you get out of your depth, the second you stop thinking, you're dead. That calmness controls your situational awareness. It controls your bug out or bug in. It controls your exfil. It controls everything. But if at any point your mind starts to run, oh my God, what do I do? Oh my God, what do I do? How do I get here? How do I get there? You're done. That's it. Game over. As much as you keep inside, I watched a video the other day, and it was a spec op operator who was saying this. He said, the hardest thing, it was Mike Glover the other day. Mike Glover, when he was on the program, Mike said, the thing I had to keep doing was keep telling myself, breathe, breathe, breathe. So I'd stay in my head. That way you keep making decisions, you keep thinking, you keep going one step at a time, one step at a time, one step at a time. The second you go out of your head, you've lost. That's game over. So the one thing I would tell everybody to keep that thing in mind is stay calm. No matter how bad it is around you, keep your head, keep your wits, keep your brain thinking.
I would add to that you are what you think. So I think back to when I was, much younger, and summer job, you know, working on a carpentry crew, that sort of thing. If you think you're going to fall off a roof, you're going to fall off
a roof.
like,
Yep.
full stop, you know. And if you think you're going to fail at something, you're going to fail at whatever that something is. So good advice there. Definitely. JJ, your thoughts on something, if people could remember nothing else but one thing from you tonight, what would it be?
It's got to be, you know, it's don't get monkey butt. If you can't save your own ass, you can't save somebody else's. I just, the number one thing that I heard in the field from people was, I never thought it would happen to me. That is always what they say to you. And the biggest, you know, at that point, that's when they become all of a sudden interested in preparedness after an incident like that, you know. And I would challenge the people that are watching right now, learn from somebody else's mistakes right now. And one of the worst things that you can do, I mean, that's the first rule of a first responder, obviously, is, you know, do not become part of the problem, be part of the solution. And, you know, we encourage people all the time, do not give your gear to somebody else, especially a stranger, someone that you don't know. If you're going to do something medical in the field, we call it ditch medicine. You use whatever you have around them, use their shirt, use their stuff, whatever they have in their pockets, or anything else that somebody will give you to treat them. You always hold on to the gear that you have for you.
Yeah, well, good advice. Appreciate that, JJ. So we got a couple quick shout outs here. The first one's a shout out to Roger Moore. Roger's been a very loyal subscriber, follower of Survival Dispatch News for quite a while. So he sent in this guy here for the hero of the day. John is the gentleman's name, or Jhonn, Jhonn. So this guy was driving through a neighborhood. They call him Uncle John. Spotted a house with a broken gate lying flat on the ground. Instead of just passing by, he decided to stop. He knocks on the door and offered to fix this guy's yard, his home, everything, right? And then all of a sudden he realized, wait a minute, there's a whole lot more here than just fixing the gate, which is the first thing that caught his eye. But he took the challenge on. He cleaned everything up, the garage, the yard, the patio. He rebuilt a, you know, rotten patio cover, replaced the swing set for the grandkids, repaired the gate, did it all. He put $2,000 into this. So I'm going to just take a link to this, and I'm going to put it in the live chat. We don't have time, obviously, to watch a 17-minute video, but if you want some confirmation that there are still good people in this world, this is a good one. And, you know, hats off to him. And thank you for sharing that, Roger. We appreciate that very much. The next one up is the news item of the day. This would be from one of our guardians. So as I mentioned earlier, our signal chat is insanely busy, and there's a handful of individuals who go way above and beyond. Tim Smith is one of them. So he submitted this story yesterday. The Minneapolis Catholic school shooting is already full of holes. And I'll just give you a quick read down here, and I'll paste the link to this into the chat as well, but it doesn't add up. 2 children dead, 17 wounded. The Minneapolis Catholic school shooting is already full of holes. Shooter left behind a perfectly staged manifesto and videos. Weapons scrawled with "Kill Trump Plus," sponsored by BlackRock. Parents' court records scrubbed hours after being flagged. Father works at a major defense contractor, ESRI. Victims' fathers also tied to government-linked industries. And with so many before him, the shooter conveniently ended it with a suicide note. No interrogation, no answers, just a ready-made narrative. Bill Cooper warned us in 1991. I can't remember who brought this up the other night ago, but mass shootings, psychiatric drugs, suicides, and the demand to repeal the Second Amendment. Just look into that. Bill Cooper, 1991 mass shootings. It's some pretty crazy stuff. JJ, curious if you want to add anything to this shooting in Minneapolis. If you didn't follow it, that's fine. But if you do have anything.
No, I was actually watching Hop and Brass Facts today, and they were actually, or maybe that was in Salt Lake City that they were, now that I think about it. But something that they pointed out anyway, that, relates to it anyway, they were half a block away and didn't even realize it was happening.
Wow.
You know, now there are some really big blocks in the United States, like in Salt Lake, for example. But a lot of people are just unaware that, I'm kind of reminded of Alan Quartermain saying the earth or the world is always in some form of peril. And I can tell you as a first responder, people have absolutely no idea what goes on around them every single day. There's stuff you don't see on the news, and there's good reason for that. A lot of times people don't need to know what's going on because of herd mentality. They just go crazy and do stuff that they don't think rationally is what it is. We always want them to, we think it's such a travesty that they're not getting the truth, but the truth is they can't handle it. I mean, I'm just being honest. It took me a while to figure that out.
One of my best friends, Lane Kelly, born and raised in Cleveland, Tennessee, was a paramedic there for years. And I remember him saying to us, that maybe 5% of the calls that they went on was, a wreck or a shooting, like somebody needed immediate care. But the vast majority of the calls that they went on were patient transports to appointments. And he's describing these people who are 400, 500, 600 pounds. Somebody was 700 pounds. And that's what they spent the bulk of their day doing is taking these people around. And he said the one lady that was 700 pounds, when she died, they had to knock out this huge, 3-pane window on the second story of this apartment building to take her out the window because there was no way they could get her through the doorway and into an elevator or down the stairs. And he said to me exactly what you just said. He said, there's a whole lot of stuff going on in your neighborhood, your community that you have zero insight into.
Zero insight on. Yeah. It's probably for the best at times.
Yeah, maybe. Right. So we're down to the conflicted question here. A nearby city has just been nuked. Thankfully, you planned ahead and prepared a small underground bunker fully stocked for you and your family. Your family is safely inside, and you start to close the hatch when your front door slams open with 6 frantic neighbors. The nuclear fallout is pouring into your neighborhood as your neighbors grab the hatch, trying to force their way in. There's not enough room or food in the bunker for them. You only have time for 2 choices. You can either let them in and risk your family's survival, or raise your pistol and shoot innocent people through the hatch. What would be your decision? Going to you first on this one, Khalid.
If it's between my family and my neighbors, it's my family first. I mean, no matter how much that may sound obscene to you, that I would pull a pistol and say no. But I prepared for my family. You should have prepared for yours. That's your own failing. I mean, that's the whole point of this entire series, is to get people to start thinking and start preparing. Whether it be a natural disaster, whether it be a terror attack, at least start preparing so that you're not stuck in that situation of what do I do? And if it came down to that, then I'm sorry, it's my family first. That's my responsibility. As a man, that's my first responsibility, is my family. My neighbors, I'd love to help, but I can't.
Yeah, I see exactly where you're coming from. JJ, your thoughts?
That is when I first joined, we had to do all of these greater good scenario exams. Would you sacrifice your child to save, just these impossible scenarios, where you have to ask yourself hard questions and you have to make difficult decisions. And I think what it is kind of like Khalid was saying, you have to have it made up in your mind that you are going to take care of yourself and your family first, right? But at the same time, the whole reason that we're here right now is to try to help as many people as we can. I don't want to say that I'm going to commit murder, if you will, before I shut that door. I don't want to put that out there. But I don't know. I've always been kind of a hopeless romantic, or whatever you want to say, but I always believe that they're not dead until they're dead, and I'm going to try to do everything I can to keep them alive. But I think for this card, I don't know, is there like a bomb going off, or like some kind of nuclear explosion in the sky and the fallout is falling? I mean, for sure, yeah, you're going to close the hatch, right? Maybe I take the gun and I scare somebody. I don't necessarily shoot them, to let them know that, hey, we're full up in here, type of thing. At least I hope that that's what I would do in that scenario,
All of these questions are skinny on context, right? So
Right.
it's very serious questions when it comes right
Yeah.
down to it, and it's conflicting, right? It's like, well, what's the right thing to do here or not? All I've got to say is I would like to think that I would put my family first, but I don't know if I could shoot somebody in cold blood if I had the slightest inkling that I could help them. So I don't have a good answer for this at all.
Yeah, that's a very difficult question.
Yeah, I'm gonna be a chicken shit on this one. I'm gonna take a pass on it because I honestly don't know what I would do given the circumstances. Now, if somebody's ranting and raving and calling me an effing asshole and let me in and everything, okay, well, you're getting high-speed lead poisoning.
Yeah.
But if that's not the case, then I don't know how I would react, to be quite honest. I want to briefly mention again our premier sponsor is Carnivalt, carnivalt.com. Until midnight tonight Pacific time, if you use the code Labor Day, all one word, you get 10% off of everything. You get free shipping, all orders over $99, and they're going to put something free, some extra free reward in your order. So just go to carnivalt.com. Again, we do not get paid affiliate income from these guys. We get a monthly stipend from them that helps defer our bills, and we appreciate that. Very, very much. Also, CCW Safe. If you have self-defense insurance, drop it and go get self-defense coverage from CCW Safe, because there's a big, big difference. It is against the law for an insurance company to pay out benefits if you were in the process of breaking the law. 95+% of criminal charges are pled out before they go in front of a court. So if your attorney says, look, I know you didn't commit this crime, like you're charged in a citizen-involved shooting, but if we take this into court, you could be facing, 30 plus years in jail. Don't roll the dice, take the plea bargain, and let's get this thing settled. The minute that you do that, the $400,000 that insurance company paid to defend you, you owe them every penny back. It's a recoupment clause. And now you also don't have anybody who's defending you in the civil lawsuit, which will for sure follow the criminal lawsuit. CCW Safe is membership benefits. We pay, my wife and I, we don't even get this for free. It's not like I've got some special deal with them. $47 a month total. We both have full coverage. So you have criminal defense, civil defense, and we also, our particular package includes $1 million for any civil lawsuits. They're also the only self-defense company out there that essentially has a quick reaction team that comes to you. So the call comes in, say 2:00 in the morning. It rings every executive's phone in the middle of the night at CCW Safe till one of them gets it, and they're on planes within hours coming to you with a complete team. They've got people who are experts in crime scene investigations, recreation. They've got attorneys, everything you can imagine. So between you, me, and the fence post, God forbid you get in a citizen-involved shooting, the first thing you do is you call 911. The second thing you do is you call CCW Safe. The third thing you do when law enforcement shows up is you say, I'm having chest pains. I think I'm having a heart attack. I need an ambulance. And get to the hospital, just like most police unions do with their guys when they're in police-involved shootings, so that you don't step on your dick and say something while you're under a high level of stress. And by the way, when you make that call, you do not say, I just shot somebody. You say, somebody's been shot. I need you to send law enforcement and 2 ambulances. So take that for whatever it's worth. But there's a reason we chose CCW Safe after 18 months of back and forth with everybody in the game and investigating what they've got. That's it. Khalid and S2 are going to be back tomorrow night. I'll be back as well, but I'll kind of be in the background doing production stuff. And it's the debut tomorrow night of the Command 11 sit rep. It's going to be just amazing information coming from Khalid, and I'm sure S2 will have plenty to add to that as well. Wednesday night, we'll be back. So both Khalid and I, Jeff, Randy, and Mike Glover, and that's for the next episode in this series. So prepping and survival before, during, after 9/11 2.0. And keep in mind, all of these episodes stand on their own. You can watch them individually. You can watch them in order. You can watch them not in order. You don't have to watch them all. They all have value. That's it. Appreciate everybody out there who's a supporter. Survivaldispatch.news, $7.99 a month or $75 a year. You get all of our sources for our sit reps. You get an invite to our Signal chat. You get all 37 of our e-magazines for free. They're $10 a piece normally. You get access to JJ's instructional videos before anybody else. Substackers always come first. And that's it. Between now and tomorrow night, please like, share, comment, subscribe. God bless America. And enjoy the closing video.
Forged in the ancient fires of folklore, tales of monsters have haunted our souls. Creatures vanquished by sacred symbols, their screams unveiling a timeless war. They lay bare a spiritual struggle, a battle of truth against lies, good against evil. In European folklore, vampires, drinkers of life, recoiled from the cross. Its holy radiance burned their cursed forms, eliciting cries of dread as they fled. Werewolves tethered to the moon's rage faltered under silver, knives or shots that scorched their flesh, wrenching primal roars. Demons, as told in medieval tales, dissolved before holy water. Its sanctified drops scorched their essence, sparking wails of agony. Zombies, in Caribbean and Southern tales, fell only through dismemberment, severed limbs halting their relentless march, a grim end to their unnatural hunger. These symbols carried power, not for their form, but for what they stood for: truth, purity, divine order. The monsters' shrieks were defiance, a rebellion against a reality their darkness could not endure. Now the arena shifts to our world. Certain voices, liberals to be precise, erupt at the sight of an American flag, a MAGA hat, or the name Trump. Their rage, almost feral, mirrors the monsters of old, as if these symbols burn like the sight of a cross to a vampire. Why this fury? Why do a flag, a hat, or a name ignite such chaos? These reactions betray a deeper struggle, a spiritual recoil from symbols of strength, freedom, and truth. This is no mere anger, no fleeting politics. Monsters and men shriek when faced with symbols of light, for they expose the darkness within. At its root, this is the eternal battle for reality's soul. When you hear the shrieks, see the rage, peer into the heart of it. It's not just a flag or a name. It's a spiritual war. It's good versus evil, truth versus lies. Which side will you stand with?